November 12th regular meeting of the Town of Wappinger Town Board. May the clerk please call the roll.
Councilman Beal.
Here.
Councilwoman Victina. Councilman Phillips.
Here.
Councilman Casella.
Here.
Supervisor Cavazzini.
Here. In just a moment, I'll ask you to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. It appears that our scheduled priest for the evening may be running a few minutes late, but I would ask you to remain standing for a moment of silence after the salute to the flag in memory of the New York State Park Ranger that was tragically killed in the forest fires across the river. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. With that, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. I'll second it.
Moved by Councilman Phillips, second by Councilman Casella. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much. The motion passes. Do I have a motion to acknowledge the minutes of November 7th, 2024?
I'll make a motion to adopt the adjusted minutes per Mr. Paoloni, what he put on our days just a little while ago. So those are the ones I'll make a motion to approve.
Moved by Councilman Casella.
Second.
Second by Councilman Phillips. They were also emailed to us as well this afternoon. So, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to open the public portion of our meeting?
I'll make the motion.
What? The public hearing wasn't.
Yeah,
I know.
but I realized that you had adjourned. Actually,
Yes, we did.
should close it. Because
We wanted to
the hearing
keep-
was on the preliminary budget, not the final budget.
I know, we wanted to keep it open because there's still,
So the preliminary budget is approved by virtue of the salaries only. So however you want to do it.
we were going to keep it open.
Anyway, yeah.
We were going to keep it open because there were still edits and we wanted to make sure people still had the opportunity to speak on the budget.
Yeah, well, it was by virtue of the public portion. All right.
I'm going to still ask for a motion to open the public portion.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Beal, second by Councilman Phillips. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you very much, folks. At this time, you have an opportunity to speak on agenda items. You have 3 minutes. We ask that you give your name and address for the record.
Councilman and the rest of the board, town clerk, my name is Rick Dahl at 187 Riverview Drive. I'm here to talk about the drought notification that the town put out, all for cutting down on the use. I sent an email to all of you. I only got one response, but you sent out the notice for us to voluntarily cut back on our water usage during this drought. Perhaps during this time, if you want to ask people to cut back on their water usage, rescind the water tax. It makes us all pay for the first 7,900 gallons. It's 1,000 square feet of water. Almost 8,000 gallons. There's people out there with 1 or 2 people households that don't even use 4,000 gallons yet. They have to pay the full price for 8,000. So if you really want to change, ask people to cut back, which they should. Give them a little bit of incentive. And that's about it. No more overcharging. Somehow work out the budget that you can change, lower down the value, maybe up the price a little bit, but you only use half. And then people use over, they can pay more. I don't know the answer. Making everybody pay for the first 8,000, whether they use it or not, is silly, because they consider that their ceiling and they're going to use it. And that's all I had to say on that matter. On a side note, I don't understand why you have handicap parking over there, and those doors you can't come in. Monday to Friday during the week, too. And there's no sign on it that says no entrance.
Monday through Friday during the week, we do have those doors open. I reopened them January 1st.
Oh, that started on January 1st?
Yes.
Okay.
That was changed from the prior
All right,
administration.
no, it was so good. It was changed in the prior?
I changed it from the prior
Good,
administration.
because I had asked the prior administration twice about that, because it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it's open out during the week.
Yeah, it's open.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was one of those crazy COVID policies, by the way. That's where that came from?
Right.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of, when we think back, right, there were a lot of crazy things that we had to do in government, right, which when we look back now, doesn't necessarily make much sense. That was one of them. And to the supervisor's support, I remember we had this conversation. There were a couple things that needed to change immediately, and that was one of them, because parking in a handicap spot and having to walk further than, anywhere else to get into the building didn't make any sense. So certainly, I appreciate you bringing that up. And, there's been an ongoing debate about loading zone versus handicap in the front.
Yeah.
That's another whole thing, right? So we tried that as a loading zone, then we tried it as handicap, then we had to go back to loading zone because we actually had trucks that had no place to unload. So I think moving forward, as we look at this campus, right, there are certainly some things that we need to adjust, and you just pointed out a couple of them, so I appreciate your input. But back to the water, though, Mike?
I invited Mr. Tremper to come as well. Mike, maybe you can come up to the podium.
Mike, we had a discussion a number of years ago about this, where we reconfigured the formula for water use.
So it's interesting, Mr. Dahl is a member of the Watch Hill Water District.
Okay.
That's a small 135-home district that's geographically located in the top of the Duchess Park and Brinkerhoff Water.
Flint Rock area over
Where
there?
our
Yeah.
water goes by.
Yeah.
All the water goes through the Flint Rock
Yep.
meter. And then also Park Hill Drive
Yep,
and
yep.
Boxwood Close and all those
Right,
people
yep,
are part of that district. So for our main water district, United Wappingers Water District, we were able to proceed with billing. It was a task, but we got the billing based to try to get people to conserve.
Right.
We haven't yet got there. The billing department hasn't, we really haven't got there yet with Watch Hill. And one of the issues was all the water is a fixed cost. In United Wappingers Water, we pump the water. We pay for every gallon used in the Watch Hill Water District to the town of Fishkill. We had those water mains were put in the late 60s, 70s. It's all ductile iron pipe on rock with no bedding, a lot of leaks, and very high pressure. So there was a lot of water lost to leakage, so you couldn't really do a per unit usage because there was a lot of costs that needed to be shared, lost water that needed to be shared by the district members. The last 4 or 5 years, we have put an extra effort into fixing leaks. The water we buy from the Brinkerhoff Water District averages 153 gallons per home, which is a pretty low number, being the health department says it should be 400 gallons per home. So I think that his point, we should look at a billing calculation so that if you're not using water, you're not paying, and if you are using water, you're paying your fair share. So your seniors who, and I happen to be a senior now, so I'm all for them, but if you're not using a lot of water, you should get a benefit of savings. His point was well taken, but the reason for it was because of the lost water through the water meter for years. But we don't have that anymore. It's been 4 years or so since we have it. So we should relook at the billing calculations for that.
Mr. Tremper, if I could, maybe we set up a meeting sometime this week with myself, you, and Leanne Freno from Water and Sewer Billing.
Yeah, Leanne she's really good at
Yes.
that, so.
Leanne and I have had many conversations, actually. In fact, one of them with Mr. Dahl over the phone, going over the budget for the Watch Hill Water and Sewer Districts as well, going through line by line what the usage is and where all the money goes. I believe that maybe a follow-up to some of his points may be necessary.
It's a whole, the Watch Hill Water District I'll be honest with you, is a stepchild. The health department now is asking us to take, for the town of Fishkill and the town of Wappingers to come together. And it's actually a consecutive district, but we don't submit reports for it. We never did. And there's some paper we can do to get away from that. But we had a number of homes without meters. We had a number of leaks. And there were a lot of costs that were just, now that we have the cost pigeoned down. We have to meet the budget. You have to meet, the water use, the water you buy, your operator's costs. All those things have to be met by the rates, but it should be divvied up by the heavy water users versus the lower water users, in my opinion.
And that's a point too. One second, Councilman.
Sure.
Didn't mean to cut you off, but our receiver of taxes, Leanne Freno, and I have had several conversations, and we've forwarded several to the board as well about what to do with properties that have refused us, in a sense, to change out their water meters. And this goes back to that point that we need to continue to look at that code change to have some sort of teeth, some sort of leverage when it comes to this. And I've been able to, since taking office, meet with several property owners and encourage them, and we've been able to get a number of them swapped out and updated, but we need to come up with some sort of legislation behind that.
Absolutely, because it's very hard to ask people to conserve water and pay off their meter if you have people who don't even allow you to have a meter.
So my point was going to be, thank you. So my point would have been is, a couple of years ago, United Wappingers Water District, we did do, as Bill Beal said, we looked at the rates, and based on usage, we were able to take those rates down dramatically. So if you have a two-family house, you shouldn't be paying the same thing as a four-family house, right? Because they're using more water. Before, it used to be a flat rate. So we can do something very similar to, what you're talking about tonight, but this worked very, very well for us, and it does help us conserve water.
It worked. I'll say this, like this past summer when you have your droughts, when you have your rates set based on as the more they use, the more they pay, and also tying the sewer use into it, the peaks during the summer months are down significantly. Now, that's good for us. I don't know if it's good for the people filling their pools and watering their lawns, but it's good for the water systems.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that for the large Wappinger United Water District, right, we make the water, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
The outliers are Fleetwood and Watch Hill, where we don't make the water. We are at the mercy of the water supplier, right? So is that fair to say that we have less control in those cases?
It's very accurate.
Okay,
very
that's
fair.
the problem. So, but I'm not making excuses. I did get your email. I didn't respond because I didn't know which district you were in, and I didn't want to respond and give you an answer that didn't make sense. But now it makes sense. You're in Watch Hill, which is really a town of Fishkill system that extends beyond the boundary into the town of Wappinger with a limited number of parcels, correct?
You are correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean we're not going to try to find a solution. Your point's well taken.
And I think,
Also charges the same thing, first 1,000 square feet.
Oh, they do?
Sound
Yeah.
feels same exact thing.
Huh, interesting.
7,900 gallons.
Yeah,
And incremental from there.
interesting.
I believe now that we have the water usage there under control, it's the time to make a fair water rate for who uses it.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you very much.
Mike, before you leave,
Yes, sir.
I think it would be wise for us to ask how we stand right now with the drought we are facing.
So we have equipment that measures the water over the screens of all our wells, okay? You're down 3 or 4 feet compared to what you were in June. June was a wet weather month. But our production is down. The water usage is down. So where our wells are holding their own, we're not using a significant amount of water. If a drought like this had coincided with July and August and people trying to water lawns, you may need to have put out some kind of a water notice to the residents and ask them to conserve. Right now, we are holding our own.
Okay.
So we've already kind of put
Look
that.
at, which is scary, because when you look at the Wappingers Creek, it's a trickle.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Sprout Creek is a smaller trickle.
Yep.
So it's
Yeah.
something that we have to keep our eye on, and we normally checked our well levels once a week, then we're now doing it daily.
So what are we using a week now? About 1.5 million gallons per day? or what are
No,
we
we're
doing?
using now
Less?
about 950,000
Wow, that's great.
gallons.
1.5 is usually summer peak, so.
Well, actually, we've been as high as 2.1, but yeah, it
Yeah,
depends.
but again, in the fall, we go down drastically.
Absolutely.
People are not watering lawns, they're not filling pools.
Yeah, no, it's
Although
good.
you still see
Power washing.
a few people watering the lawns. We normally flush our hydrants this time of year. We suspended flushing the hydrants. We asked the fire departments to cut down on their drilling. I mean, their drills and those type of things. So, we're not in a bad way, but people need to be careful.
Absolutely.
And we need not to have fires where we need to use a lot of water to fight fires.
True.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other? No. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
Mr. Tremper.
Thank
We
you, Mike.
appreciate you. We're still in public portion, folks. Anyone else would like to come up, please state your name and address for the record.
Grace Martin, 52 Fieldstone Boulevard in Wappinger. Budget questions. Thursday I asked some budget questions. I want to see if I can try to get some of these answers today, please. For the senior budget, year to year, without the salaries, what was the senior budget that was budgeted in 2024 versus what is budgeted in 2025?
Madam Comptroller, would you like to come on up?
Yeah, I don't have actual numbers in front of me right now, but the difference was Garden Club, $2,500. Not Garden Club.
Book club.
Book club.
$2,500.
So year to year, we're down to $2,500.
Correct. Everything dollar for dollar stayed exactly the same. There were no increases on not salary
Yeah.
type lines.
Anything that was not
Okay.
salary related.
So with that,
And I would like to note, Mrs. Martin, too, that this was the department head's recommendation. So we took the department head's recommendation, put that right into the budget.
not a problem. So is didn't we the also senior- go up This is the to- senior recommendation.
I was just going to say, didn't we also go up in the exercise Thursday by $2,000 too?
That's contractual services.
Contractual services, the exercise specialists, that line went up by $2,000.
All right, so we're down $500 year to year then for the senior budget.
Without salaries.
Without
Without
salaries.
salaries, without salaries, because you just
Correct.
added, you said minus 25, he said add in 2,000, so we're down.
And again, the book club, for everyone's gratification on this, book club historically was funded by the town of Wappinger. We have, since beginning of the year, created a partnership with the Grinnell Public Library District to supply those books to the seniors.
Thank you. In retrospect, I look at the recreation budget for the youth. The youth is being proposed to double summer camps. So that goes from a camp counselor of $60,000 to $120,000. Camp director from $90,000, now getting two to $18,000. Head counselors from $9,000 to $18,000. Field trips, $9,000 to $18,000. Celebrations, I don't know, this must be well, that's a different one. So, my point again is, if I look, you've doubled substantially budgetary items in the youth. The youth field trips going for $9,000, and those field trips only go for 2 months. Seniors are being asked to contain $7,000 in 12 months. And you've made $9,000 for the youth field trips go to $18,000. I question why you need, first of all, 2 camp directors, so you can save $9,000 there, but then it's nickel and dime. Again, so year to year, the senior budget went down $500, and the rec budget has gone up, back of the envelope is almost $100,000. I ask you to reconsider that. Give the seniors some more opportunity for field trips so we can go. So take that $7,000 line, which I complimented you on last meeting, to keeping it to the same. There's no reason that can't go to $14,000. And then other stuff. Again, I have nothing against the youth, but it's substantial. I also heard from the board last time that you're planning to expand activities for the seniors, but they were non-budgeted items. I'm not going to question why they're not non-budgeted items. I don't want to go to a park and play there for free. So again, I'm asking you to strongly consider increasing the senior portion of the budget. We are 25% of your population. The other thing I'd like to bring up, since some of the board members talked about it last time, and now I decided, based upon them talking about it, I did a deep dive and I did a county benchmark. There was some discussion about medical buyouts. So I re-looked at your budget and I went line item by line item for the category that's called medical buyouts. There's a total of 6 people under the AA
blank, 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 but the last four digits is the 0125 account. It shows up in three places. It shows up at 110, 015 is one person. Then there's another category, 1220, 0125 is two people. And the last one is 13150, three people. So that's six people. You've increased that part of your budget line, which wasn't there last year, giving six people $10,000 for a buyout. Where I then look at the BB item, which is a deputy inspector, building inspector, that poor lonely soul gets $2,500. Don't understand why six people can get $10,000, all brand-new line items, and if I recognize the people on those line items, there are 5 of the 6 are brand-new people. I've also did a county benchmark, because as I said, I did a deep dive into this. The county benchmark is the county employees get $2,500. So that's a delta of $45,000 on those 6 people. I think that should go to the senior budget. Why are you giving far from a benchmark? Once again, recognize private industry does not have these kind of numbers. And that's the truth. I worked for a company, I gave them 30 years of service. My husband gave them 30 years of service. We did not reach the rule of 85, which we had to be 55 years old and 30 years of service to collect medical. I was 41, my husband was, I was 51, my husband was 49. We got no medical buyout. Zero. Many, many people in Dutchess County who were affected by IBM layoffs or Philips Semiconductor layoffs or NXP layoffs or any other companies in this county got no buyouts. I had the worst time in 2009 during the recessions, didn't ask anybody for any money. My bonus was to pay Cobra for 2 people for 18 months until we sustained another job. Please re-look at this item. As a taxpayer, I personally think it's a sin for you not to stick to a benchmark, which is $2,500, and give other people this kind of money and not give senior citizens an increase in their budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Martin. I would like to note, too, a few points in your comments there, and I'll ask Director Fulton also to come up and address the senior center budget as well. The reason why this buyout was being rolled out the way that it was is its anticipation of contract negotiations next year with Teamsters and CSEA. This is moving forward with... I know that. This is it.
I want to have my rebuttal when you're done.
This is in anticipation of doing that eventually. All right. Obviously, we identified a number of positions that are not covered under those collective bargaining agreements. We've already floated this out to the CSEA union in particular, as majority of those members are on the insurance. And they also get a higher amount than the $2,500 they get. They get over $4,000, the CSEA members. So again, last meeting we talked, an average health plan costs around $40,000. Okay? Now again, a number of those members too that you had mentioned would probably be a single plan, which is still more expensive than the $10,000 medical buyout. What we were trying to do is, again, save money by doing this. We're going to be upgrading our employee manual, which the town board has and is considering revisions to. That was the whole point, was the town board to give us input. But in the meantime, we wanted to have a funded option here to start this project. Yes, I know. You're gonna say that this was only for right now the non-union employees that you pointed out there.
That's what I wasn't going to say. If you even give them the $4,000 times 6 is $24,000 versus the $60,000 you put in the budget. So once again, I'm okay to get $36,000 to the seniors.
Yeah.
No, but
That's good math.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'll up that you've gone beyond what the county benchmark was.
Yes.
Okay. And again, I'll make the $2,500 go to $4,000, but it's still then only $24,000 versus the $60,000.
And what I'm looking for too is Input
they're
from the
not-
board. I'm looking for input from the board
Okay.
as well. This is something that we've
I only
talked.
brought this up because I heard the input from the board was they were not happy with those
Absolutely.
kind of money.
And that's
all
why,
I'm
again,
saying.
it's also, I believe it was withdrawn or discussed by being withdrawn at the last meeting. So again, what we're trying to do here is come up with some sort of consensus that works with the town board. We don't have an employee manual that has been updated to reflect those numbers yet. So right now, as we stand, it's still that amount. It's actually 50%, it's actually 50% of the lowest plan, correct?
Your seniors are on Medicare.
Yes. And I would also like to note that.
Those that are fortunate buy a supplemental plan.
And I would also like to
Nobody
note too,
gives-
Mrs. Martin.
Nobody gives me money to buy a supplemental plan.
No.
Nobody gives a lot of seniors money.
I would also like to note, Mrs. Martin, too, you mentioned private industry, which, majority of our residents, are employed by private industry. Unfortunately, what we've seen is in the public industry, public sector, is the wages, the salaries are not as high as many of the other places like IBM. And so what we've seen is lower salaries here, better benefits, which has been the historical trend here in the town.
That's correct. For
So-
two sisters that are in the
So my point on this.
It's civil service.
Yeah.
I
My whole
understand.
point on this thing is the $10,000, and again, I think it's extremely high, the $10,000, and we can debate what that amount is, but the whole objective here was if you were on the plan today and you got off the plan tomorrow, you were going to save money that way. You don't get it if you're not on a plan today, you don't get the $10,000 buyout. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's an added cost to the bottom line of the budget.
But if
I
you-
think in the county, and Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you need to be on a plan for 3 years before you get a $2,500 buyout.
Yes, so full disclosure, I'm a CSEA member, Dutchess County. So our union contract requires you to be on the existing healthcare plan for, I think it's 3 years, before you can opt out, right? This way you don't have people that just get hired getting a buyout, right? Because then it's basically like a bonus. And that's not the intent of the buyout. The buyout intent is to save the municipality money, right? So just looking at the numbers, I mean, it just blows my mind. A family plan on a municipality costs upwards of $40,000, right? So if you are offering someone a $2,500 buyout, right, to get off of that plan, there's a net savings, obviously, for the municipality. So that's the intent of a buyout. It's not supposed to be a bonus. It's a buyout for the purposes of saving money for the municipality. I think and we have to discuss this more because there is some difference of opinion with respect to, who is eligible and who's not. For those that are management confidential, right, and I don't know if we classify it that way here, but those that are not covered under the collective bargaining agreement here in the town, and I've said this before, they're kind of in a gray area because there's no definitive obligations on the town and obligations on the employee. And I think that's where we need to drill in here before we approve this budget to ensure that there is a level of equity across the board.
Yes.
And I do understand that we have employees that our management that have been here for decades, right? And I want to ensure that there is a level of fairness for them as well. So, Grace, I greatly appreciate your concern. I also even more appreciate the math you did a few minutes ago. I don't know how that, how it all.
MBA in finance.
You are such a great, advocate for the senior center and the senior community. And I certainly know that we're going to have more discussion because, obviously we can't discuss this as a board when we're not sitting here in front of you. But I can tell you that one-on-one, we've had text messages where it's like, hey, we got to work on this. This doesn't make sense, right? And we need to make sure that it makes sense, not only for the town, but also for the taxpayers.
Yeah.
And what you're paying for your insurance is no different than my husband and I, who was in private industry, and he was the sole breadwinner for 10 years. We were paying, in last year's numbers, he was paying almost $20,000 out of pocket to cover him and I. So on his salary, which was comparable probably to the supervisor's salary, we were paying $20,000 to be medically covered.
Yeah, I
So,
don't doubt that.
so I would have had the family plan numbers if we had a family, but we do not. So you're seeing no different.
Oh, yeah, no.
Dollar to
It's-
dollar,
it's-
and everybody
crazy.
does not make the salaries of the old
And
days
Ca-
before.
and
So
Councilman
again,
Beal's
I'm
point-
just appealing to, I don't think it's fair. Go to the benchmark that the county uses, because in my opinion, your numbers are higher than even what your benchmark is saying.
And to Councilman Beal's point, again, after the deliberation that we had at the last meeting, we have not met again to obviously amend the budget and make any of these adjustments. So obviously tonight, there's going to be some further discussion.
Yeah.
That's where this
And-
happens.
Sure.
And the budget is not going to get approved tonight. It's going to continue to have these deliberations and these conversations. So
And
again,
I appreciate
Yeah.
that, and I've also known for the past 5 years, if nobody stands up and speaks, we do not see change or get the change.
Oh,
So
yeah.
again, I
Oh,
am
yeah.
publicly, you're all nodding, you know I've asked line item by
Sure.
item in the past, and thank you, Bill, for saying I am an advocate for the seniors, as well as the seniors in the county, because I serve in a county position as well. So again,
Yeah,
I
of course.
appreciate it, and I'll wait till I hear what the rec is for the rest of the youth. But again, I'm just appealing that the senior budget, year to year, by all your math, is down $500.
Point well taken.
and we can make
The-
a motion to change that tonight.
The children's rec budget is substantially up. So the motion I would like to see is more money in the senior programs for buses or wherever else we can use it. But $7,000 for senior buses in this day and age limits the seniors to have probably 4 bus trips, one-day bus trips, versus benchmark of your other municipalities. They're going on overnights, and they're using substantial more money. So again,
You said there's a $500.
you're just
Yeah,
year
that's
to
it,
year, we're
yeah.
down $500 in
Yeah.
seniors.
I'm sure we can resolve that.
Yeah, and
But
again,
I
that
don't
was
wa- I know
because,
you wanna be-
that was
to me,
because of
that's
book club.
To me,
That was because of
But
book
again,
club.
Joe, excuse me, Supervisor, but again,
Yeah.
that's, are you missing my point that the senior population is 25% of your population?
Sure.
You've kept us even, and the youth, which is probably also the same 25%
Sure.
population, you've gave them another, basically, back of the envelope, $80,000. Not fair, that's all.
So your point is well taken here. You know, we are flat basically year over year in the senior budget. You said about $500, and certainly we should take a look at, you know, redoing the budget, taking some of the money, assuming we can come to an agreement on the medical or other things, we should take a look at increasing that. Keeping it flat with everything else going up just simply doesn't make sense.
And the light item is the quickest one to do,
And-
is double our buses.
Well, and again, you know, what we do during this process, as we've outlined throughout this year, is we've worked with each one of our department heads. They are the most knowledgeable people in their respective fields, and we started this process in July. Every single department. And we went line by line by line, asking for needs, requests, goals, so on and so forth.
Sure.
That is what is in this budget here. It is not what was slashed. Actually, I think we added to the recreation budget in terms of overtime, and that was discussed at the last meeting. And again, this is the beauty of this process, is again, the town board can now deliberate, discuss, talk about adding additional items. And that's what I hope that can happen here tonight. And again, as we've talked about at the last meeting, our new recreation assistant, Kelly Ann, working with Director Fulton, already have a beautiful lineup of activities and events. Again, we went over that calendar last week. And again, you will be very, very pleasantly surprised to see what that lineup is going to be. And again, I hope that you will continue to see throughout this budget process that the town board will take action in adjusting that budget as well.
So again, this is input. We appreciate your input.
Thank you very
We
much.
understand your concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to ask Director Fulton just to come on up and maybe give a brief overview.
And Grace, real quick, while Jessica's coming up, so I don't believe we're going to reach consensus tonight on this budget anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, we've had a tradition here, we're not trying to rush the budget approval because we want to allow for as much public input as possible. So we appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where would we like me to start?
Senior Center, for example.
Okay.
That would be a good
That would be a good start, yes. One of the things that was a bonus in last year that perhaps we might be relying on in the 2025 budget a little too much was the success, in fact, of our sponsorship program. It was successful. We had these sponsorships that could offset some of these programs, but through that, some expectation might have been to decrease budget lines and rely on sponsorships. We didn't decrease anything to rely on sponsorships.
No.
So, in a way, and perhaps we didn't take into account the well of that running dry or having issues getting them in 2025 off the back of the success of getting a lot of them in 2024. It was almost like what I was considering was an unseen increase in the senior center budget. So something that isn't on our books, okay, but is, do you need me to? Oh, okay.
The screen's just flickering.
Got it. That is not an increase that's seen on our books, but are additional ways that we would be having funds to fund these programs.
So the issue I have with that is we can't count on those funds that come in every single year, as you said before. I'd rather plan for it, and to the extent I
Yeah.
don't spend it, I can use it either for other things,
Yeah.
or it can offset some of the expenses that come in. So I'd rather plan a little bit higher than assuming we're going to get some value in there again.
Okay.
But still, we did not decrease any of those as,
No, but the point of the matter is
Yeah.
they probably should have increased them, because you can't count on all these, extra funds coming in.
and as we've seen.
Sponsors, et cetera.
No, of course, and as we've seen throughout this year, and as actually Mrs. Martin has outlined
Yeah.
a number of times at this podium too, thanking these sponsors, we've been very aggressive in getting them. But again, the budget was not cut to reflect those, and if anything, again, I think that we can
Yeah.
come to a deliberation consensus tonight, is to increase
Yeah.
that to reflect what Kellyanne,
Yeah.
Kellyanne came on late in the process. Katie and Jessica are now talking about internally. So
Yeah.
I think that what we should see is, following this meeting,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps a memo from you, Kellyanne, outlining all of the
Yeah.
programs that you explained and expressed to me last week, and if there are any budgetary impacts of that, this way we have some
Yeah.
real numbers, rather than just hypothetically throwing money at something that we don't know the true numbers of.
Well, I think possibly incorrectly on my part, which who gets up here and says that? Incorrectly on my part, I went, okay, we're not cutting anything and we're going to get sponsorships. So that means that in a way, the support for these programs is increasing, but in retrospect, after Ms. Martin's comment and things like that about what if the well runs dry, looking back on it, an increase to those lines would be
Yeah,
appropriate.
We can take care of
The
that.
intent was good, but we just want to be careful not to supplant the budget with grant funding, right? Keep the
Exactly.
revenue and our contributions equal,
Yep.
like the councilman said before. That's what we should do.
Yeah,
So you assume right now, in your numbers today, keeping them flat, no sponsorships, no nothing, correct?
so that was what is there. Increasing it, I think would be a good idea.
Okay.
Increasing it would be a good idea, yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Did you want me to go?
No, I was going to say, we'll bring you back up in a little bit.
Okay.
So, thank you.
I did ask, what's the children's budget? Can somebody answer that? What's in for the children?
Director Fulton, it is your budget.
I mean, I see double.
Yeah, again, that was because, again, the summer camp, we are adding an additional summer camp at Castle Point, as we've outlined before.
Yeah, so it's not just a general overhaul or a general doubling in the budget for the children. It's to correlate with that specific program. If we're going to have 2 camps, we've had enormous waiting lists every year for the past several years. So to open a second camp, you want to make sure the 2 camps are equitable in what you're providing. You don't want to have one camp be funded to a lesser extent than the other camp or have fewer opportunities than the other camp. So the funding for that is under the understanding that both of those camps would be full. That's not necessarily what's going to happen, but that's our hope. We have to fund it for that possibility. So,
So if I look at your expenses, year-to-date actuals, you're at 88,000, your budget's 78,000, so doubling that would be roughly 170,000, not 156,000. So I don't know if you're taking into account that you're going to do 160 children at each one of the camps, you're not. And I know it's later on tonight, I guess we need to talk about, at some point in time, the upgrades we have to do over at Castle Point if we're going to have
yes,
camp there.
that
So I don't
is
know if
why
that's on the agenda tonight, or we're going to do it another night, but that's something else we need to take into account as well, because that's going to be a pretty large capital expenditure.
So something we can do is we really packed Marts beyond what we like to. We had the staffing to do it. We don't ever want to turn a child away, especially a town of Wappinger resident who wants to go to camp. But once you split it across 2 camps, you can set a more firm cap of this is how many children can go to this camp, and this is how many children can go to this camp, and almost be a little more strict in the staff budgeting, because you have 2 camps operating to be able to meet the needs of the population.
And I was going to say, I believe that you addressed this at the last meeting as well, the summer camp, that you went through the specifics behind this.
Yeah. I think the issue more so is the staffing, not the supplies.
Yeah.
I think, so. I do have some playground things to talk to you about at whatever point is appropriate in the meeting. But if there's any other questions, and also it is worth noting that, we don't necessarily break even on summer camp, but summer camp is a revenue generating program.
Right, but adding an additional 160 people to the other camp, right, we actually lose more money, correct?
Well, it's losing money right now.
Right, so now you're going to double it, now you're going to lose twice the amount you lose today, unless we look at a different formula.
I believe that we had talked about at the beginning of the year, coming up with the beginning of this year, a different formula for that, and that did not make its way through.
That's something we need to discuss as well as part of the budget process.
I agree. We had tried to address it at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing we can talk about now, but we have to pass post first of the year. But I am very willing and have a lot of numbers to support that discussion.
Also, is the camp going to be open to outside residents?
So that is something that we examine after all residents have registered.
Because last year when we brought it up, we were told it was too late to cut people out. So if the town is subsidizing, like we did,
That was 2 days.
That was 2 years ago.
if the town is subsidizing campers, I don't see how we can allow outside
Well,
campers into
that
the
was
camp.
done by the prior administration and historically.
Both myself and Mr. Beal agreed with the subsidizing,
Yeah.
but we did not want
And
outside residents.
And this year was the first year in
Yeah.
many years that it was 100% town of Wappinger resident,
Yeah.
That's perfect.
which is the way that we want to keep it. Now,
Good.
today, we went over, we had 60 town of Wappinger residents on a waiting list.
Correct.
60 town of Wappinger residents.
Correct.
So what adding the additional camp will do, because Martsfield is maxed out, we'll be able to take on those additional 60 and also alleviate the burden at Martsfield, because correct me if I'm wrong, the 160 or so kids that are at Martsfield, some of them will be moved over to Castle Point, so.
Correct. So the plan, it's a twofold kind of thing. One, if we want to do purely residents and residents only, which would be, it's going to be split by the schools that the children attend. One that has the least impact on separating kids from kids they already know. If you're moving to a new camp and you're not going to see some of your longtime camp friends, at least you have your friends from school. Okay, so we're going to be splitting that up by what school they go to in the town. To be determined on who goes where, we're going to be working on that.
And the idea too behind this, not to cut you off,
Yeah,
but
sure.
the idea behind it too is, 20% of the town attends the Beacon City School District.
Yeah.
And the idea was to try to get some of those kids to come. They would obviously have a summer camp on their side of town, and build more of a relationship with those taxpayers as well.
Yeah. So for the discussion of non-residents, the decision does not, obviously, that is not a decision or anything for tonight, but I can give you some of the rationale and reasoning behind why we allowed residents in the past. When I came on board a decade ago, the camps were in decline. We were closing camps. We weren't filling. We were getting about 100 kids at Marts. We started supplementing with non-residents for two reasons. One, to fill the space, and two, hope they're not watching, we charge them more. So there is a premium, which is something if for some reason we are getting towards the opening of camp and for some reason we have these extra spaces, if we are not filling both camps to the capacity that we would like, one of the things that could be very closely examined is not raising the resident fee, but increasing the non-resident fee.
As we should. I mean,
Yeah.
out-of-town residents should pay more. And,
Yeah, and they do now, but I'm
Right.
saying increase it where we don't increase a resident fee.
right, no, of course. And, again, there's an ebb and flow to this over the years, right? So, you know, previous administrations will be faced with different challenges.
Yeah.
You know, 2009, 2010, that whole time period was a crazy time, right? People did not necessarily have the ability to participate in certain things. It was a recession. We've come out of that. You know, we'll see where we're going now, right?
Yeah.
This season could be another record season for town residents to participate. If that's the case, then we don't need to entertain out-of-town
Exactly.
residents, right?
Yeah.
But I will say this, and I appreciate the members of the board that are always trying to get back to zero, right? But in my opinion, this is a service we provide to the town residents,
Yeah.
right? And, you know, my perspective has changed on a number of things here as I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old now, right? I've been here for 19 years. Now I have 2 kids, so I see things differently than I did, right? So parents look for these services from their town, right? Similar to the senior services, right? There's an expectation that the town will provide services. And we can't always try to get to zero, right? We can't always try to make a profit on these services because I would argue we have a responsibility to provide these as services. So tax dollars, that's why people pay their taxes, right? But I do appreciate Councilman Cassell's perspective that we want to try to limit, you know, expenses and be able to produce revenues and get to that point. So that said, I think we're in a good position. You know, I think that opening a second summer camp location is a position we always wanted to be in, right? We did not have that opportunity.
No.
So I think you know, it's going to cost us a few more dollars to do that, right? And I think as we look to expand our recreation offerings, we need to be doing it for the entire whole community, right? From the young folks to the more senior folks, right?
Yep.
And again, that's one thing that we've been striving to do this year and then into this year, next year, is also utilizing the facilities that we have. We have amazing parks and facilities. We truly do, and they're underutilized assets. So what might not be translated to real numbers in a budget may be translated into capital expenses, whether it's through ARPA or through using fund balance or Parkland Trust, in improving upon the facilities that we have for additional programming. And again, this is something that we're fleshing out almost every week, developing new concepts, developing new programs, developing new facilities. That's the goal, that's the objective, is to, where we're lacking space in this building, is to ultimately use the over 1,000 acres of parkland and facilities that are underutilized throughout the town, and that's the goal.
And, you know, as a part of it, which we'll get to in the other part, but I will put this part in here, is making an investment in Castle Point when we get to the playground discussion is for more than just camp. Camp is our kind of spark that makes us want to put this new equipment at that facility. But that park is also not in the greatest shape. It has playground equipment that is the kind I saw in my youth, so that's a very long time ago. And it needs that upgrade regardless of camp. Now, it's a larger scale kind of upgrade that we would be making to it because we have the aim of having the camp program there. But in general, when you're talking about that park and the investment that we would be putting into that park, it is more than just camp.
So we're looking at something similar to what we did at Martsfield from a playground perspective?
Correct. And that playground and
It's
Robinson.
$120,000.
Yeah, so the playground at Martz is probably our most used playground because it's our most impressive
Yes.
playground.
Well, I would say the playground at Robinson Lane is
They're twins.
Yeah, those were twins.
They're twins.
very, very well utilized.
Yes.
I will say
Yes.
that. And for the record, I'm still waiting for a playground, but we'll talk about that.
That's all going to be talked about.
Tell me
here.
where you want
Yeah,
it.
that's, so again, again, to remind everyone, this is still the public portion of the agenda.
Okay.
So Director Fulton will be called back up here, and we'll talk about how we're going to use ARPA funding on some playgrounds. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on agenda items? Seeing none.
Move to
Motion to close. Moved by Councilman Beal.
Second.
Second by Councilman Phillips. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving along to our resolutions. First resolution is what we've been talking about basically all night. Resolution 2024-207, resolution adopting annual budget for fiscal year 2025. Do I have a motion for discussion?
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Casella, second by Councilman Phillips. For discussion, we had a number of points that were laid out by Councilman Casella, Councilman Phillips, and Councilwoman Bettina that were made to an amended budget. The comptroller then made those adjustments, obviously keeping the dialogue open. Want to see if there's any further amendments to the budget.
So are these, this what I'm looking at, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so were these amendments offered on the dais or not?
They were offered, they were not voted on.
Okay, so.
And I would like to go line by line and vote on those.
Yeah, I mean, I'll yield to Councilman Casella, and by the way, thank you, Al, for taking a forensic look at this, and I'm not being sarcastic, I'm serious, and keeping the board in the loop, because certainly you have identified a number of things here that I think are worth mentioning and highlighting.
Well, the first, I mean, we started off with the medical buyout, and two, much discussion individually. As Bill had mentioned, the county does 3 years with a $2,500 buyout, and I think the town should mirror that. That goes in line with our current contract, and as you said, we can be revisited as we go along.
And again, this is what we're trying to get at,
Right.
is this feedback. And when we had sent the employee handbook out a few weeks ago, we were looking to get this language that everyone wanted. Now, again, the employee handbook basically needs to be adopted, or at least in some sort of final form before this budget is.
Or by the end of the year, correct?
Well, at the end of the day, we need to know what we're funding. I need to know exactly what we're funding in this budget and what we'd like to reflect it to be in the employee.
So I think what we do then is before November 20th, what we do is we decide what we want to do specifically for the medical buyout, and we make sure that's implemented into the handbook.
As well as any language behind it too. That's what I'm hoping to obtain. So if you'd like, after 3 years, if you'd like single plan, family plan, give us some more verbiage behind it.
After 3 years, the employee's entitled to $2,500.
So you want to be similar to what the county plan is?
Correct.
I would also
That's
like to
my
note that
proposal.
the county salaries are substantially higher than the town salaries.
So I think we need to understand that an appropriation in the budget is not necessarily the mechanism that it's going to be paid out, right?
No.
So
Correct.
if you're appropriating a line item with a given number, okay, that does not necessarily imply that it's being obligated to employees until there's a mechanism. And the mechanism for a union would be the collective bargaining mechanism.
Correct.
A mechanism for management confidential non-union would be the employee manual. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica.
Nope, you're right.
Yeah, the handbook. So I think that, and it's up to the majority of the board, but I don't necessarily agree with taking all the funding out at this moment, right? But I do agree with creating a standardized mechanism that is fair for employees to decide to opt out of the medical insurance and be eligible for some level of buyout, which would be determined within that document.
So what would you like to include in that? I think the supervisor is asking for language.
Well, I think right now, if we're discussing budget line items, the question ultimately is, do we want to fund the line, right? And if we do want to fund the line, at what amount? Right now, if I'm reading this, there's currently, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I've been working on this throughout the day to make sure I have the most recent documents, but based on the 2025 tentative, there's $10,000 in that line, correct?
That's right.
Okay. So it's up to, I would yield to you guys on how you want to handle this.
I think this is something that we need to have a further discussion. I don't know if we're going to resolve that on the board tonight.
And I respect that because I don't foresee us approving this budget tonight.
No.
Correct.
So we can have further discussion about that.
I just want to hear the discussion. That's what we're getting at.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
So,
So we'll put for further discussion for that one.
okay. So
That's
the-
10-10-0125, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
we're going to leave that alone for right now. Then there's
Correct.
12-20-0100.
I think we're going to leave that exactly as is. I think that's what we actually had to report a couple of weeks ago. It was out to the public. That's the supervisor's salary.
That's the 3%.
That's the 3%.
And just
Same as everyone else.
Yeah, so there was a typo on this, or what was that?
It was initially a typo.
All right, so it's corrected now in the
Yes, it
document?
was
It's
corrected.
corrected in the,
It's
the
correct in what we
hearing-
published.
Yeah,
the published version is the correct version.
Right, and that's the 67.
the highway superintendent's salary, everyone's, yes.
So we already voted on that, so
Yes.
I don't think we need to vote on this because it's already been handled in public session. And
Right,
it-
but Jessica needs to update her file to reflect that.
So if it was a typo, then,
You need to vote.
Just a
No,
typo,
no,
yeah.
that,
Tell me what the changes are, and then you'll vote on the final document.
yeah, 67,790. Okay.
Next one is 122000100, which is the supervisor's secretary salary. I think we established that it's now 53,817,
to be the 3%, the 3%.
3% versus 2%.
Okay, and again, that was an oversight because it inadvertently was listed at 2% instead of
Yes.
3%. So
Correct.
it's a 1% increase to 53,817. I don't object to that.
Correct.
Next one is the budget officer. The new number is 5557,
Yeah, that's a 3%.
3%
3%
consistent.
increase.
Got it.
Next one is, as Grace had talked about, the 125 accounts. That's the medical buyout. So that's another one for the 20 we have to discuss.
Okay.
Controllers, 13150100, it's the salary line. There's two things we did for that. We took the $50,000 out currently for the bookkeeper, and then we added $2450 in for a salary increase for HR.
See, I still feel very strongly about backfilling that third position in the comptroller's office, specifically for finance. Again, the comptroller's office historically had 2 support staff to the comptroller, and as we're seeing every single day, additional accounts payable, escrows, vouchers, health insurance, you name it, just the amount of work that's happening in that office is substantial. It's getting done very efficiently right now, but again, looking to backfill the previous third position.
And my only point with that is I think we have an unutilized or underutilized asset that we can be doing more with.
So Al, what you're suggesting is we're going to be removing a full-time equivalent position that has been included in the tentative budget for bookkeeper, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm not ready to make a decision on that tonight. I think we should have more discussion, but I do see both your points.
Next one is for the town clerk. It's 1410-199. We put in money for raises for the clerks in anticipation of hopefully getting them raised, getting their titles changed. Again, it's kind of a holding place. So for that's the 20K.
That's in a contingency line then?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And then just refresh my memory now, so the deputy town clerks are
They're subject to.
non-union?
No, they're union.
They're
They're
union.
subject to the Teamsters collective bargaining agreement, so they would be at 2.25%. What I believe Councilman Phillips and Casella were proposing was in anticipation of us going through PERB and removing that title out of the union, as well as the secretary to the highway superintendent out of the union. They were anticipating adding that raise into there.
Don't know what it's going to be, but we assume it's going to be, so we put in there 20 for now.
It's an attempt to remove them, it's not
Yes,
guaranteed.
yes, and
Until
Correct. It's not guaranteed.
yes.
All right, so in anticipation of perhaps, I guess,
Change of title.
Well, you can't change your title, it's removing the position, because Mr. Paoloni is entitled to his 3 deputies by law.
so I guess it would be in anticipation of having to reconfigure salaries, base salaries, is that correct?
So what the ideology was going through the tentative budget was, as we're going through PERB, we didn't really want to,
Show our cards.
yeah, to PERB and act like we're trying to do something. So what we were going to do is, if we go through this process and the deputy town clerk and the superintendent of highway secretary are successful,
Yeah.
then we would obviously come back to the town board and make the
Sure.
amendment. That's what our plan was, but again, I yield to the board.
I see both of your points. I would look at this as a gesture of potential good faith.
Yes.
Right? I don't object to that. I understand the legal side of it. I've been through this before, but we have very hardworking deputy town clerks that, in my opinion, are classified inappropriately. They had somehow got mixed up with half union, half not union, half protected, half not
Well,
protected.
by virtue of their position, their political appointments.
Right, I get it, and they're,
You know.
and I think this, perhaps, things will get cleaned up, and now we'll have some flexibility to make some improvement there in the base. I don't have an objection to that. Well, I see both sides of the coin, though.
No, I have no objection. I'll go with the majority.
Next one is 1410, again, a medical buyout, 125. However, this one is required, I believe, Jessica, this is for the town clerk, required by the union.
Correct.
So we were just missing it, so we had to add it back in.
No problem.
That's the deputy.
Yes.
What? Sorry, deputy town clerk. Yes, sir. Next one is the engineer, 1440-0400. Today, we're at 54,000 actuals, and I think we're actually going to be a little bit higher than that, waiting for some bills from our engineer. We're at current preliminary is 75,000, and we wanted to add another 25,000.
Comptroller Savidio?
Yeah, I'll send an email out tomorrow too with more true numbers, because I got the 2023 amounts to be moved back out of 2024, and they're quite large. So I'd like to send those to you too before you make a decision on 25 engineering costs.
So it's higher than the 54,000 is what you're telling me?
More was moved out of 2024. Your actual expenses for 24 will actually be lower than they are.
Yes,
Okay.
significantly lower. And that's what we were trying to express at the last meeting, was again, there was a number of expenses for the engineers and attorneys by the previous supervisor and by the previous supervisors, engineers, and attorneys that were booked to this year. So obviously with that expense,
So
we've been very
we'll
conservative.
wait to hear your, or see your note tomorrow.
Yeah, but I would like to note, again, we've been very conservative in terms of using
We'd
our
also like to make
professionals.
sure you get your bills into both of you. So we have an accurate, because that's one of the issues we had last year. The engineers and also the attorneys weren't getting bills in on time, so that caused us a problem as well.
Well, and again, we are working with Larry on moving him over to retainer, which will be a little more beneficial for both of us for next year. I believe Hogan, Rossi, and Liguori has submitted theirs on time and has been
So
consistent.
Larry as well.
Yeah.
Larry's up to date. I have him within 10 days of the.
I was going to say, yeah, I was not aware of anything. Yeah, I was not aware.
Because he's in multiple funds, right? A and B?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
their bills are all in.
Yeah.
We're
I-
all over the place.
yeah, I was going to say, you're making me second guess myself now, because no one has been behind this year.
Nope.
Next line item is 3640-0400, disaster preparation. We had 6,000 on the budget last year. We have 0 in there today. We wanted to put 5, and I believe, Bill, you used $2,000 of that this year?
Yeah, so I know historically we've had 5,000 or 6,000 in disaster prep, which we haven't spent. I know we're applying some towards training for our fire departments for this year, but I do want to take a look at reviewing our emergency plans next year. We have a couple professionals that we can entertain to do that. I have no problem going to $5,000 on this, if that's what you're recommending, right?
Yes, sir.
We do also have the Microsoft Word document now. We were able to find it.
Yeah.
So before, I remember former Councilman Bob Johnston was looking to make revisions to it, and he was making handwritten notes.
Yeah, yeah.
Now we at least have the Microsoft Word document, so it should be much
Yeah.
easier. And again, I'd be happy to work with you and anyone else on
Yes.
updating it.
Perfect. If we can just keep some money in there, just want to make sure that we have something in the disaster preparedness fund. And this is really, the way I've looked at it, is more of a planning and training type line. If we, God forbid, we have a disaster in this town, we have
Sure.
other abilities to pay for that type of thing. So this is really from a preparedness standpoint, I think important to have it in there. I appreciate you taking a look at that.
Sure. Next one is the Highway Department, is the highway salary. All that was there was 0% raise, and we made it 3%. And the 102,273 is what's posted out there to the public.
And this is the amount that was published,
Yes,
correct?
the
Yes,
highway
sir.
superintendent's.
All right, got it.
Next one is the Veterans Line, 6510-0400. I think we agreed last time, we had zero money in there. We put 5,000 back in. We used to have the Veterans Advisory Committee as well in there. So what we did is we took the money from there, moved over to this line, just so that there was some money in there for, veterans for, future.
The reason why, Bill, it was zeroed out in the tentative was it was previously funding a salary of a private organization's president, and we stopped that at the first of the year.
Okay.
So we just changed the line. Before it
Yep.
was under Veterans Advisory, now we put it under Veterans Miscellaneous.
Yep, I'm looking at it. Good.
And the last line here is, it's really two things. It's the Sports Museum and the Wappingers and the Historical Society, Wappinger Historical Society. We had $5,000 in for each. We made it $7,500 each. And the reason we did that specifically was the Sports Museum. They were paying out-of-pocket expenses. They put about $1,000 of their own money into it. They came to us with a request if we would a little bit more. And what we wanted to do was kind of treat the Historical Society and the Sports Museum the same, so we gave each one of them, or at least we recommended $7,500 for each one.
And as a board member of both of those organizations, I greatly appreciate it, but I would have to abstain from that.
Yeah, I have no objection to that. They're great partners on both sides. And before we go to B Fund,
Yes, sir.
just looking at our other partners in Challenger League, Little League, United Soccer League, we're funding those entities at the same levels, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're good there. Yeah, everything looks good. I see the veterans thing. Okay, good. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Now, the only other one in this file here, which we probably don't know anything about, and it's kind of new, but I think you're probably aware of this, we haven't got the dollars from the Dutchess County Dial-A-Ride.
Yeah, we always get that after our budget passes.
So right now, we would assume flat at 67, that could go up a little bit,
Yeah.
but we don't have any idea at this point in time.
Yeah, and I mean, unless something insane happens, the increases are small.
Yeah, I've been led to believe that we're not going to be expecting any sort of,
There was a larger increase that was done in the prior year, I want to say last year was a
Yes.
large increase. Because there had been no increase for multiple years, so I don't anticipate.
Okay.
So let me ask you this question with respect to Dial-A-Ride. I remember when it was under 40, but then we expanded our Dial-A-Ride offerings, right? So how does that look right now? Do we have sufficient Dial-A-Ride coverage
Yes.
for our seniors, or do we need additional runs? I know it's expensive, I'm just asking.
So right now, what I have seen is a major increase within the town of Wappinger transportation. They have certain days that they travel outside of Wappinger for people to go to I don't remember which day's which, but,
Right.
one day they go from Wappinger to Fishkill, Wappinger to Poughkeepsie
Yeah.
for people's errands and things. But every day is Wappinger in Wappinger Day.
Yes.
And especially within just our senior center, we've seen an increase in ridership direct to the senior center and home. So
Good.
we're getting good use out of it and more each day.
and I've expressed that to the county executive, our pleasure with Dial-A-Ride. It is a great asset, and we continue to encourage all of our senior population to use it. And again, right now, we're not anticipating any substantial increases.
Yeah.
Good.
One of the most exciting things that I get to see every day in my job is someone who's not sure how they're going to get their parent or their grandparent or whatever. Oh, I don't think they'll be able to come that often because they don't drive. I'm going to have to drive them. Da-da-da.
Yeah.
We are participants in Dial-A-Ride, and it just
So it brings them here,
Yeah,
and that brings them home?
Yes.
door to door, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jessica,
No, that-
how does a
great.
senior access that?
They call.
How does a senior access Dial-A-Ride?
Yes.
Dial.
So, yes. And it's not that.
It is that easy.
Well, it is that easy once you're a participant in it. So people don't register for Dial-A-Ride through us, but we provide them with the information to get hooked up with the county to do it. They register directly through Dutchess County Transit, and it does require a little planning on the seniors' parts because you do have to make your reservations a couple of days in advance, especially if it's one of the ones where you're traveling outside of the town. The Town of Wappinger Senior Center is a standard daily stop in the morning and a standard daily stop in the afternoon, so.
See, Bill, you made it sound like it was senior Uber, and it's not.
Well, I mean, in a way it
In a
is.
sense, it is. And also, when I was in the
Yeah.
county legislature, we had funded a paratransit as well, where it's very similar, so it's not just for
And
seniors.
sometimes overlaps.
And overlaps,
Yeah.
where folks with maybe disabilities or whatever it may be, you can call ahead and the county public transit will come and pick you
Yeah.
up.
Awesome.
And it is door to door.
Door-to-door
Well,
service, yeah.
driveway to driveway. They're not coming up your front
And I
steps.
believe last year, Director Fulton, you had set up for the bench to be added out to the side there.
Yes.
So this way, they actually have a nice seating area
Yes.
for them to come and wait.
Yep, absolutely. It's getting more and more used, which is fantastic.
Yes. Okay.
I do actually have one more question for our controller. The auditor position. So we had originally $33,000 in the budget for 2024, going up to $45,000. Last expense report I saw from you was only $22,400. Do you expect we're going to hit $45,000?
Yeah, we don't even have the full audit paid for as of right now.
Okay.
Yes. So,
All right.
just to put that in perspective.
Okay.
And just for full clarification, folks, it's not an auditor position, it is the independent auditor.
Correct.
That the town of Wappinger hires to conduct the annual audit.
Which is
Which-
required.
Which is required by law, yes.
So we can just make sure in the future that they make sure we see all the reports and everything too.
Yep, we don't have the final as of right now,
Okay.
just so you know.
right.
They're just waiting on the last portion for the board report, and then we'll have everything over to you.
Okay, thank you.
Be fun?
Bill, you all set?
Yeah, be fine.
Okay, so B Fund, we're looking at the engineer again. It's line 1440-0400. Currently, we're at 85,000. In the preliminary, we're going to 100. We spent 129.6K, so we're over. So some of that going to move from 24 to 23 as well?
That's correct. I'll send you updated engineering and attorney amount in the morning.
Okay. So do you think we're okay at 100K, or do we need to bring it down, I guess is the question?
I think that we'd be fine with 85.
Yeah, I think we'd probably be okay. There was quite a large amount that came out of B Fund for prior years. So I'll look at the exact number, and then I'll let you know first thing in the morning in my email.
I do want to stress, again, we have been very, very conservative with using our professionals this year. And again, once we go over to a retainer system for the engineer, I think that
Absolutely.
you'll be satisfied.
Okay. Again, I'm just going based on numbers that we see today in actuals, so that's why I'm asking the question. So we'll leave that at 85K?
Yes.
All right. Vandalism. So Councilman Beal, this is kind of your specialty here, but right now, through October, we spent $182,000. Current budget in '24 is $342,000. We wanted to bring it down to $317,000. The only line we touched that's different, there's a contingency line out there. We brought it from $50K down to $25,000. Again, we're at $182,000, we'd go to $317,000, but that's your area of expertise, so I would defer to you.
So you said the contingency? Or?
He's talking about
Yeah, so it's
community policing.
3120-0100.
And again,
Personal services line.
I have, again, some concerns and reservations about, defunding police here in this budget.
It's not the funding, because we haven't paid anything against it.
Well, again,
this year.
they are behind in their billing, the county sheriff's office. We are anticipating increases there, and as I expressed at the last meeting, we're seeing record high constituent inquiries from each one of our wards, your wards, my whole town, basically, requesting additional target patrols. We're seeing people speeding up and down town roads, county roads, and I would like to remind everyone again, we changed from last year's model from mostly relying on the passive patrol to doing more targeted patrols. We anticipate doing additional targeted patrols, and any little bit would help.
So let me just clarify what you said, because I'm not suggesting that we defund anything. What I'm asking is a question, and Councilman Beal is probably the expert on that, and I would leave that to his discretion.
Well, what I will say, Councilman, is, and just so folks understand what this includes, we have a deputy sheriff who is assigned to the town to schedule our patrols, right? So that's not being touched. We have the overall dollar amount for the patrols, which we have not been billed significantly on that line. So I see what you're saying, that there is some room there. We have a targeted traffic line, which we started a number of years ago for the specific purpose of stop signs, handicaps, fire lanes, right? Putting a unit on just to do that type of specific enforcement. So I see that.
We haven't touched that line either.
Okay, there's a $50,000 law enforcement line in here, Supervisor 0482. Do we know specifically what that line is for?
So all of the police together, that's how you guys had the line split up, and that's their budget. It goes directly to the person at...
Neil, Lieutenant Stewart gets his
Yes.
budget. He knows exactly what he has to meet. And again, we can pull from these different contingency lines here, because again, we do not have a police department. This, Wappinger Patrol Service, definitely is a huge asset. And again, Lieutenant Stewart knows his top number, and he knows what he has to meet to execute this community policing for us.
Obviously, we're also behind on billing with them because they have to calculate all of their monthly amounts, and then the monthly bill comes over to us. So I have to check to see exactly where we are, but that does take some time because they have to supply it to us before we can.
So one of the issues in putting the budget together, some of the assumptions we're making here is based on the actuals we're seeing through October. If they're not updated or accurate, again, a lot of that's not your fault, it makes it difficult for us to make decisions on how do you move forward. We would never take out 25K we're looking to do if we thought you were at 300,000. So that's the kind of information we need as we're putting the budget together, because I'm not suggesting in any form that we defund anything, but I'm just looking at the actuals, what we're spending, and what the to-go is for the last 2 months.
Right, and what I do in my analysis is I look at what was spent up to the date that I know, whether it's 6 months, and that's how I project accordingly. But again, we didn't have a full meeting where I sat and was able to go through every line item with you guys to explain that.
I will say that there is more money here than there has been previously. I don't want to take anything out right now, though, because I will tell you why. Because this town has a partnership with the Wappinger Central School District for school resource officers, where we have school resource officers in our elementary schools. That's not common across this county.
No other town has that.
No, and the way we got to that agreement was we and the superintendent of schools came to an agreement that we would co-fund that initiative, right? So the school district previously had SROs, school resource officers, in the high school and in the junior high, right? We wanted to ensure that there was consistent law enforcement presence in Myers Corners Elementary School and Evans Elementary School. That wasn't possible unless the town came to the table, because the funding was not there specifically from the school district. The staffing was challenging also from the sheriff's office in order to meet that need, but now that we're a year plus into this, they have been able to successfully staff both elementary schools every single day. and the sheriff's office has been present. It's not the same deputy every day, which I want it to be the same deputy every day, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. We're working toward that. It's the same deputy in the high school, the same deputy in the junior high, and the idea is the students get to know the deputy, right? And they build a relationship and they build trust. We haven't been able to get to that at the elementary level yet because the staffing doesn't exist for that. I think by keeping this intact, it's going to give us some flexibility to have some conversations again about how we can work with the sheriff's office to staff the same deputies within those two schools, right?
So you know, we do have another line there in the A fund, 3310-0400, traffic safety patrol for the schools. We have $15,000 for that.
That was a
as well.
placeholder because we had a question regarding A fund, B fund. And I think there is some room here if we need to make some cuts, but I would rather keep this section intact right now.
That's fine.
And as we get into 25, I think there's going to be flexibility within this. I'm just going to say public safety right here, law enforcement, where we can move some things within these lines if we need to. But right now, again, we are doing something that is innovative that other municipalities are not doing, and I know other municipalities are looking at us on how we're doing it. So I do appreciate you looking at those opportunities to cut some things there, but I think if we can keep it intact, it would be better to do that for now.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Again, these are things we're debating here, so
Yeah,
it's not,
sure.
they're not, final, so just keep that in mind. Next line item is, it's for fire inspector, longevity, 3410-0100, and this is something that Jessica said we needed to update, so we had $300 and it's supposed to be $1,200, so that's what this is. Next one is a part-time fire inspector. I know we had a discussion today, Jessica and I, the line item 3410-0112. I believe that putting a dollar amount there is not the correct thing to do, but we need to see what the position actually pays. So if you can
Yeah.
comment on that?
I think right now, with $15,000, that would only allow you to pay someone $16.48. I don't think you're going to get anyone in that type of position for that dollar amount. And plus, we would need additional funds for Social Security as well, too.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there, and I had a number of reservations about adding that part-time inspector back in, because again, we would be looking at additional $1,150 for the Social Security and Medicare. I have concerns about the hourly rate, because right now, our current fire inspector makes $28.77 per hour. If we were thinking about bringing it up to like a $20 an hour position, we would need, we would need
$18,000.
an extra $18,000 to do,
So the whole idea of doing this, right, and adding this back in, is we had it in the 2024 budget. We had $15,000 there. And we know at some point in time, Mr. Prego does an excellent job, but at some point in time, he's going to retire, and we want to make sure we have a transition. So you don't want to go from having somebody do it today to nobody and not having that backfill.
I just want to stress again, not just putting a number out there, but just coming up with what it means.
I'm okay with, my
for
point is we
yeah.
should have a discussion on it. That's why the number's out there.
So
So whether
would-
it's 15 or some other number, you need to talk about it.
Well, would you like to raise it to,
I don't know.
$18,200 would be the salary,
I
the
would
baseline
defer
salary.
that to the.
Well, no,
controller.
this is for us to decide, $18,200 for the salary, and then an additional $1,100 for Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah, so
What does
you would need,
18,200 get
Do
us?
you want to do 20,000? That's what I would say. If this is what you guys want to do, I don't want this to be a contingency payroll line.
So this
I don't want that to
is a placeholder, God forbid, right, something happens, you need a placeholder. And that's all this is, whether it's 15, 18,200, whatever the dollar amount is, you need to put something in there. If you don't use it, different story.
just so you know as well, too, when it comes to civil service, they don't have the system built in order to have two people in the same title at the same time. So we would have to work with the county in order to get an additional title even put onto our roster, because that's not how civil services, it's not built correctly. Obviously, you would like that person in the position to be able to train another person, but we currently wouldn't even have that position on the roster.
I would say that we have to double check that, because in previous years, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman, we did have a deputy fire inspector for a short period of time.
I don't want to get into the whole civil service title versus New York State certification title, which is a whole big debate, right? There is a need, in my opinion, for additional code enforcement officers. I was going to say that. I believe that we would be, it would be beneficial for us to have a part-time code enforcement officer option within. We can title it based on what it needs to be titled, right? I do think there's an opportunity for an additional fire inspector on a part-time basis. I do think that Howie does a great job, right? But we got to be looking downfield, right? We have got to continue to see where we're going to be in 3-5 years. Howard is healthy and doing a phenomenal job. However, I would feel more comfortable if we had someone in a position that can start shadowing what Howie's doing, right? There's a lot of opportunities for 1203 inspections out there which generate revenue to pay for these types of positions. And, you know, Howie does a great job doing the 1203s, but there's more out there that can be done, right? Doing BJ's Wholesale Club is something that a part-timer could do, you know, as a whole job right there.
And I think we all agree with that. I was just stressing the point of we just need to make sure that we fund it appropriately. You know,
So
it's good to have
yeah.
a number, so I
And my
think
whole, point was, we know we have to fund it, whatever the dollar amount is, we're not sure, but you need to fund it.
well, I think what Councilman Phillips and I had said was 20,000,
Put
so
20 in there?
I'd like to amend the 15 to 20.
Well, we're not amending anything, but yeah, we can do 20 is fine.
And again, with the stipulation that this, you know, is for that employee, it is not to be used as any sort of contingency payroll, as was done in the past.
How many hours a week does Howie work?
He's,
17
yeah, he's
17 and a
part-time.
half.
17 and a half, right?
He's currently making $28.77 an hour.
I'm just doing some quick, yeah, it's 910, so that's like 26,000 something. So I would say put 20 in for now, and then if we do move forward, again, you're not going to hire somebody for January 1st, so
No.
Correct.
if you put 20 grand in there,
Should cover you for half a
I
year.
like to have that flexibility of the 17 and a half hour employee, but I understand there are, you know, you can't stack them, right?
Yeah.
I understand that, you know, then it's basically like a full-timer. So we don't want to skirt civil service, but we want to be in a position where we have some flexibility to bring somebody in to shadow a part-time employee perhaps, and I have no objection going to 20 grand on that line. I would just retitle the line. Right now it's in plural, part-time inspectors. I would put part-time inspector, right? Just so
Yes.
that we're not implying that we're trying to do multiple things with that money.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get at. You know, we have one identified purpose for it. In the past, it was used as a contingency payroll. I just want to make sure that, again, we're funding it for the objective of hiring a person.
I'll also need an additional $1,530 for Social Security for that employee too.
That was factored into the,
The 20?
We'll just go 21.5 then, because
Yeah.
that wouldn't the
Because-
benefits be in a different line anyway, right?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. That's why I'm saying I would need it in a different
but like what we
line.
talked about was $20 an hour.
Okay.
Would be $18,200.
Got
So
it.
you've got it
Okay.
covered in the 20,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
we were including in the 20.
20
so-
includes the social.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, so we already built that in there. Okay. Clothing allowance?
Next one is for fire inspector as well, 3410-0204, clothing allowance. That was something that you suggested we need to have in there for Howie. Recreation, all this was just a comment, 7310-0104, 156,000. My question is, number one, is it enough based on where we are today at roughly 89,000 versus the $78,000 budget? And second of all, are we going to be able to fully staff? So I think that's a bigger discussion, but I just wanted to bring it to our attention here because it's something we really need to take a look at.
And again, you know, as we kind of covered during public portion, we're going to be splitting from Martz Field. We know Martz Field has a cap of about 160 for the health department.
Right.
Here or there. And again, we're going to be pulling from there. We have about 60 people on a wait list. So again, if it's the case that and hopefully we do, we have so many families looking to get into this program, we can obviously come back to the town board. But right now, this is doubling everything that we have and should be adequate.
Okay. Last one is in the B fund anyway. It's 8015-112. I know there's further discussion on this particular one. It's a certification stipend, so I think that needs a little more
Yeah.
talking.
Not
Jessica and I
to-
had that conversation today, so
Yeah,
it's
not
a
to
question.
divulge too much publicly, but again, just for public gratification, there was a stipend that is typically reserved for Teamsters collective bargaining unit members. An employee that is not a member of that collective bargaining unit was found to be collecting that. Obviously, we need to have a conversation. The stipend was for certification and code enforcement. By virtue of that one position, that is a requirement of the job. So again, I think that we have to have additional,
Well, because it also affects two other people, right?
well, and those two other people, that would be
So it's not
ratified through a
just the one
collective
here,
bargaining
but-
agreement. Yeah, so those two other positions, that would have to be ratified through a collective bargaining agreement. This one position here is obviously subject to the employee manual and not that.
But I still agree that at some point in time, whether it's a stipend or something else, the additional 5 should be paid, and we can have a further discussion with that. Again, we paid it out this year, we've been paying it the last couple of years, so I understand Jessica's point and your point on this one, but that's something I think, requires further discussion.
It's just, right now, we're following the rules that we have.
I know. But we're also taking $5,000 pay away from somebody.
Well, again,
It's hard to
should have-
swallow.
it should have never been issued to that one employee.
Well, here's the issue, though. So whatever it is. We have this employee, for example, is approaching retirement. I'll be straight up with you, all right? We were previously providing this individual with a $5,000 stipend because they maintained a code enforcement certification. I don't agree with the stipend. I think it should have been added to this individual's salary. It should have been
Correct.
base salary, because I'm not taking $5,000 away from somebody who's going to be retiring
Correct.
soon.
Correct.
Because that will impact their Tier 4, I believe she is,
Yep.
right? 3-year final.
That was my suggestion.
Yeah.
If we could move it to a base salary line versus calling it a stipend, especially being that it is a requirement of her job.
Yeah.
It could get us into some murky water, but it would be much better to have it in a base salary
Yeah.
line versus a
As I
stipend.
mentioned at the last meeting, I'm not a fan of stipends. We really are trying to get away from those.
Right.
But again, in trying to work on following best practice, it should be a salaried issue.
It just goes back, I have no proof as to why we were compensating that employee.
Yes.
It's not in the handbook, they're not a part of the union. If we were to get audited on it, we wouldn't have the backup as to why we were
Yeah,
compensating
so, I mean,
them.
it's a matter of public record anyway. We had all these conversations on the dais. We faced challenging times where we needed certified code enforcement officers. It's still difficult to get certified code enforcement officers, to attract them. And we provided an initiative for folks to get their certification, and we gave them $5,000 to get that certification and maintain it. It's not a secret. That's what was done. Now we're in 2024. It's a different situation, right? We have a different landscape out there. So rather than have a stipend provision in place for this particular employee, who's a management employee, why not take that $5,000 and add it to the salary line? The question is, what happens the following year, right? So the question is, how do we ensure that it's not a one-time bump, and then everybody else gets their stipend in the union, and this person doesn't get it? So I will not object to doing the status quo for this 2025, okay? Apply the $5,000 for the 2025. But during next fiscal year, we need to determine a better equitable process here. It can't be, certain people are getting stipends and others aren't.
But that's still
Go
the issue that we have here is, there's still no methodology of that employee getting that stipend. Or, again, the town board could pass a resolution at the beginning of the next year. You could put it in the employee handbook, whatever it may be, but that's the problem with the stipend. Right now, there is no documentation stating that that employee receives that stipend. If you'd like to add it to the salary this year, and then that continues to move on.
It can get murky, though, because then if we add it to the salary this year, right, we're going to be back to square one during budget next year.
Mhm.
So.
And that's what I'm getting at is, again, you could say, all right, we'll continue the status quo. Well, technically, we're still getting flagged on something that there's no paper trail to allow that one employee to have.
Well, if you put it into the salary this year, then next year's, say, let's call it 3%, would be on this year's
Right,
salary.
right.
And it would just continue. So it wouldn't be the base salary plus 5, and then it could get lost for next year. So
No, it's not going to get lost, but they're going to get 3% on top of the 5,000. It's going to
Right.
compound, it's going to compound each year.
Absolutely.
That's the
So
issue.
instead of getting on a base, you'll get on a base plus 5, and you get 3% on top of
Which
that.
is great for the employee,
Yeah.
but we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that.
Exactly.
We got to figure out, so the point here is, we want to get it in, this may not be the right place for it, but it was something we needed to talk about.
Sure.
And so that's what we want to do here.
Maybe we should hold off on this one. I'm talking about, we should have further discussion about this one.
Yes.
To make sure that we're doing this fairly, rather than decide right now. I mean, I think we all can agree that, well, maybe not all of us, but I think some of us can agree that this person should receive, okay, I think we can all agree that this person should not have a reduction in salary.
Correct.
Yeah,
we
all agree. It is what it is at this point. It's happened. We should not be pulling that salary.
We just got to figure out how to do it, that's all.
We got to figure out how to make it fair.
As the one that signs the paycheck,
I get it,
I
I
just
get
want to
it.
make sure that we're
No.
doing everything legit.
It's a valid point, trust me.
Yeah.
Just understand that the number of years ago when this was decided, I was sitting right here. And at the time, that was the best way to handle these situations. Now, years later, it's a different situation now. I'm not saying they're not deserving of the money, but the mechanism by which it's provided should not be, in my opinion, stipended.
That's fair.
I agree.
Stipended?
I don't know if that's a word.
I don't like
Sounded good.
I don't like stipends.
So we'll hold off on that one. We'll discuss further.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
DB?
There's only really one item here, and it's small. It's line item 5110-0100, overtime. They put in a number, meaning the area, I assume they gave you the input. They're at 54,159. I guess Supervisor, you had put in 56, another $2,000. To me, I made it to what they inputted, so it's up to you guys. But it's $2,000. Again, I don't know if they're going to go overtime. Jessica, you could probably tell us how they're doing against their overtime budget, but I think they're substantially under. So, and again, I wanted to use their input.
They are, and again, I just want to note that for the majority of this year, the Highway Department was down 2 employees on that current overtime. Obviously now, we've filled one of them. The Highway Superintendent is in the process of backfilling his last position. Obviously, we wanted to just give him that additional leeway. It's only $2,000 for the overtime in case we do have a tough winter,
I have no objection.
Yeah, that's
since
fine.
he will be fully staffed. Okay.
Yeah, I read all 29 of those emails, by the way, about the highway formula. I mean, I missed my email for a couple of days. I went back in, there was 29 emails about this one thing,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
it took me a couple of days to read it, but
I think we got it ironed out, though.
It's all good. It's
I
all good.
appreciate,
It
you know,
took us
It was
the
correct.
first.
I appreciate all
At
that
the
work.
end of the day, it
29
was
emails
correct.
later, we had it right.
That was a lot of work you guys did. I appreciate that.
I was going to say, Councilman, I have one note that I was planning on bringing up already, but do you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I don't know if any of the councilmen do either. I don't know Bill or Chris.
No, again, thank you to the board members that had the opportunity to go line by line. I mean, I was a little behind a little bit with everything going on, but, you know, I think part of this process that is sacred is the due diligence, right, that each of us do, right? And with respect to the wards that we represent, we lobby for different things. We don't always see things the same, which I think is healthy. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to reach consensus, and we're going to be providing a budget to the residents that, again, is below the tax cap, which
Correct.
we have been
Yes.
able to do. I think we're probably one of the only municipalities that's done this every single year since the inception of the tax cap.
That's right. Thank you, Councilman. I would like to note that, again, earlier I had spoken with our rec director as well as our senior center assistant, Kellyanne, about changing up some things in the senior center. Obviously, we've explained this meeting and the last meeting about the additional programs and activities that we're looking to do, but we've also talked about bus trips, and that was one thing that Mrs. Martin had mentioned before. One thing I wanted to bring up tonight was line item 7620-0481. That's the bus trip line.
B fund.
Yep.
What was the number again?
A fund.
7620?
It's in town and village. Right now, it's $7,000. I'd like to double that to 14. One thing that we've expressed to Kellyanne and to the rec department is doing additional bus trips, changing the types of bus trips, changing the bus company, because I was very dissatisfied to see the condition of the buses and the seats that were sent to me by residents. I feel that increasing this line would get us a better quality bus company and also add additional trips that Mrs. Martin and many of the other seniors have expressed to me over the past couple of weeks. So
Yeah.
I'm looking to double that to 14,000.
Are we allowed to go on the bus trips with the seniors?
You gotta be 55, you gotta be a resident.
So this cuts your,
You-
He can go.
No,
so this cuts your,
we'll run alongside the bus. We can't go.
this cuts your 36,000 down by 7,000, all right? So we're keeping track here.
Yep.
I wanted to be a chaperone, but I guess not.
You can be a chaperone. You can be. They have some fun times.
Bill, I'm willing to give up one or two for you to chaperone if you'd like.
There's some good dances
Good
too that you
Lord.
can go to.
Be careful what I wish for. Yeah, I have no objection to that, Grace. I appreciate, your advocacy for the senior, our elders of our town, with all due respect. I think, the people that have paid the taxes the longest,
Yes.
right, should get something.
Yes.
Right.
And that was the ideology behind this. And talking to not only Mrs. Martin, but many of the other seniors, was doing just this. So, obviously, thank you, Grace. Grace not only represents this town as a member of the Office for the Aging Advisory Committee for the county, but she also goes around and represents us and volunteers with her husband, Michael, at all of the different senior luncheons, not even just in this town, but all across the county. So we greatly appreciate both of your efforts. But again, independent of that, this is what we were thinking of, and hopefully we have consensus. So.
I have no objection. Now, my question would be for the, all right, do you have any more, Mike?
No, that was it.
For everything we agreed on
Anything else I
tonight,
got?
right, for all the items we agreed on, should we codify that with a motion or a resolution, or how do you want to handle that?
I would yield to the
So I think what we ought to do is
comptroller.
get a summary back before we
Yes.
codify it, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because I think, Jessica, you were taking notes, so was I. We should just make sure we agree on that, and then we can do it, I think, at the
Okay.
following.
I was going to say, because
Yeah, that's fine.
there's a number of items that we did not come to a consensus on, that we've all tallied here, so I
why don't
think
we-
if Jessica can.
So why don't we make a list of those right now, or at least identify tonight the ones that we need to discuss? Certainly, the medical buyout is one.
Yep.
I think there's a disagreement on the controller with the 50. I think that's the supervisor has an issue with that one. And also with the engineer, I think in 1448 fund, I think he wanted to keep that at 75 versus 100.
I would just prefer to look at the actual numbers
Yeah.
that now
Okay.
that I
That
have
was
those
it.
expenses
Yeah.
out.
So that was
I
the
have
only
no
two I
problem,
saw on A.
Yeah.
I think we agreed on B on the engineer, taking it down from 100 down to 85, and then restoring the vandalism to 342, which currently is today, and then taking the part-time inspector to 20. So is there anything else that we missed other than those two items? that
And
we
then the
disagreed?
zoning administrator
Okay.
stipend.
Okay.
Yep. So I was going to say.
So everything else, I mean, you could codify the rest, Bill, if you want.
Yeah, no, I think the easiest way to do this is based on the discussion we had tonight, provide a summary of the consensus items that we have consensus on, and we can formally act on that at the next meeting.
Yes.
That's fine.
Hopefully, we will also have consensus on some of the other items for the next meeting, so that we can get these other issues.
Well, we need to do it by the 20th, so we have to do it before that.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, yeah, so
Jet,
that's the easiest way to do it.
Comptroller Servideo, you'll get us. Thank you.
Because she can verify the numbers also, that's the other thing, we want to see what the bottom line's going to be.
Yep. I knew what they were before the changes tonight.
And when you calculate the tax rate, you're taking into consideration the county chargeback, correct?
We paid that already.
Oh, so we paid in advance?
We paid in advance, so it
Yeah,
won't
that's
affect
already
the
in the
taxes at all. It's already paid.
Actuals.
Okay, that way we know exactly what the tax rate's gonna be.
Yeah, last time we got billed back $25,000 to $30,000 and it changed the rates.
Yeah, I know.
We were ahead of the game.
All right, so that's good. And right now, Supervisor, we're on schedule to be where we need to be, correct?
Correct. We're on schedule still for a tax rate decrease and to be under the New York State tax cap.
Very good.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks.
We had before a motion second for discussion. I'd like to make a motion to table Resolution 2024-207
So
to the
moved.
next meeting.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Phillips, second by Councilman Beal. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Motion passes. Resolution 2024-209, resolution approving water tenancy agreement for Nature Preserve. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Councilman Beal, second by Councilman Phillips. Any discussion?
Yes, I do have a question for our attorney. So I was looking at the contract, and I thought each unit was going to be $3,200 versus $2,000 for two-bedroom units and $3,200 for three-bedroom units.
There's only one three-bedroom unit.
Right, there's only one, but I thought we agreed.
I had to go back through, I did, well, so Alan called me, a little earlier in the day with the question, so I went back, as we were sitting here, through all of the correspondence on the file. And in December of '23, the negotiations had left off on the buy-in fee, with an adjusted buy-in fee of $2,000 for the two-bedroom units and $3,200 for the one three-bedroom unit. And the subject of that negotiation was they were looking for 5 years to pay that off. The 5 years were rejected by the town board, but an agreement was reached on $2,000 for the two-bedroom and $3,200 on the single three-bedroom. When we came on, the big issue appeared to be how this was going to be securitized. So we had, revised the document, gone back and forth over, 11 months at this point, or 10 months over the securitization, the payment schedule. We never readjusted back up to $3,000 for the two-bedroom. And so that's where we left off. So when you called me, I thought I made a mistake, that it was.
The only reason I asked that is because the original negotiation said it was going to be about $170,000, $3,200 a unit.
You were 100% correct. When the negotiation started, the total amount was $170,000 and change. And it was negotiated in a number of different ways, iterations that were rejected over and over and over. But I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when the board went back in December and said, hey, look, well, this was December of 2023, or between November and December of 2023. And, it's hard to say who was doing the negotiation at the time. There's no, I'm looking at emails, and there's no, emails are not getting copied to the full town board. But that change was approved by resolution. Basically, a resolution was approved in December of '23 in form and substance with those figures. And so we didn't renegotiate that back. We went back and said, hey, look, we have to reconfigure how we do the securitization. So that's where, this is the product of all that negotiation.
Question is, does it establish precedent?
Yeah, certainly anything we do can be precedental,
It's not good.
Again, just by way of background on this, folks, this was a tenancy agreement that was negotiated between the Nature Preserve Homeowners Association, the prior town board administration. There were a number of issues that were raised as soon as I took office that we were trying to clean up. The full town board has Attorney Ligori had mentioned, was not fully aware of what was going back and forth. We had amended the agreement to say that we didn't need any easements. We had amended a number of different things, tried to make it easier for the people of Nature Preserve, and also get them to understand that this is something that they need to do. You need to buy into the district. You're using the district's infrastructure. Everyone's on the same page. But again, this has been something that we've been working on all year, trying to get everyone to the table and just get it done.
I think there was a material misunderstanding of when the buy-in was due, because our
Yes.
first conference with Nature Preserve, it was their impression, and they had been advised that the buy-in would not be due until they entered the district.
Yeah.
So the whole basis of the negotiation was that the buy-in fee isn't due until you guys expand the district. But that's not what the law said. The law said
that's
that the
not.
buy-in
We
fee
had-
was
yeah.
due when they connected.
Exactly.
Right, this is a
We
tenancy
cleared
agreement,
that. Yes.
correct?
Right.
Yes.
Right, so that, again, just real quick, this started out as an emergency need for water. That's what this started out as. And this ended up being a situation where we gave them water because they didn't have any. And there was a temporary connection from the fire hydrant to the water system, which went on for months and months and months until it got cold out, became very concerned about that. Eventually, the infrastructure went in the ground and it was done. But there had been an ongoing dialogue with respect to the buy-in fees for the tenancy and the terms of how long that would go on for. What you're referring to is the back and forth on the emails that we all didn't see all that conversation going on.
2 years of it.
Yeah, trust me, I thought I was in the twilight zone when, some of the information came out that was totally different than what we had agreed to.
Yep.
So where this stands right now, my question is, are all parties in agreement with this document that we have before us?
Yeah, we were very satisfied. The HOA was very satisfied. We had a very good and productive call, and Mr. Ligori has been in contact with Mr. Dockery, their attorney. I believe everyone is satisfied now.
Okay.
So this is now 2 years, correct, only? Instead of the 5 years,
That's right.
2-year
Correct.
period?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have 2 years to pay.
It was originally going to be a 3-year deal,
Right.
but now we're a year past that, so.
Well, it was 3 and 3,200, now it's 2 years and a mixture.
Right. So I would prefer to put this to bed. I understand that it's been quite a roller coaster journey here, but I think we did our due diligence by giving them what they needed, and I hope that they're going to return that part of the agreement with what we're agreeing to right now.
I know both the supervisor and the attorney worked to clean up a mess.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that. And I
you,
thank you both. Something like this, we did it in an emergency situation. It puts a bad taste in my mouth when the next emergency comes up and I ask for a check. Because look what happened. And I'm just saying, as Councilman Beal said, we did it. We provided an emergency water situation. But when my resident around the corner from me, when their well goes bad, they don't come to the town asking for, a check to get their well done. So it leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Well, again,
And again, thank you both for working on it.
Thank you.
the other wrinkle in this whole thing is this is the New York City DEP water line. So there were restrictions on this line previously. I don't know that there are currently restrictions on the line anymore, but there were only emergency connections being allowed for years and years on this. And, we have made some provisions for other locations, right? But in this case, it's a multifamily housing development, right, that would have had to truck water in. My concern was for public safety also, right? God forbid, you need water to put a fire out. So we did the right thing as a town.
Yes.
I thank you to the supervisor and the attorney for ironing this thing out. I want to put it to bed, and I appreciate everybody's patience on
No,
this.
thank you. So, is there any further discussion?
No.
Seeing none, we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Mr. Ligori, you'll be sure to get in touch with Mr. Dockery. And
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Resolution 2024-210, resolution authorizing purchase of vehicle lift for the Buildings and Grounds Department. Do I have a motion for discussion?
I will make the motion.
Moved by Councilman Phillips,
A second.
second by Councilman Casella. For discussion, at the town board meeting that we had in the courtroom, the last regular board meeting, we went into excessive detail for the need for the Buildings and Grounds Department to have this vehicle lift. The acting supervisor of the department came and explained the need. Since this town board took the right action and hired a mechanic specifically for this department, a fleet that we inherited when we took office that was nearly inoperable and was quite dangerous has been restored and is in excellent condition. To continue this progress and to alleviate a significant safety concern, I would ask that my colleagues on the board consider purchasing this lift. We did go on a site visit and toured the two facilities. Again, in talking to the department head and in talking to the mechanic and running the numbers, it is the preferred location and the more affordable location to go to Oakwood Knolls to put this lift. And again, I ask for town board support to address this significant safety issue and assist the department.
So I've got no problem with the purchase of equipment. I just think we need to have a long discussion on where Buildings and Grounds is going to be located.
I thought that we were in agreement for the Oakwood Knolls site that day. I believe you offered a building
I
there.
said we need to put it in a brand-new building, because I don't think either one of those buildings are adequate.
And ju-
Personally,
yeah, and
that's
ju-
my personal
and just
opinion.
by way of background on that, the Oakwood Knolls site, our maintenance mechanics, they determined that the footings there are solid,
No, I
solid
get all- I
footings,
get
there's
all that.
electrical capacity.
That whole ground is solid concrete.
Yeah.
I get that. I just don't, I think we need to discuss looking at where they should be. I think the board needs to have that discussion.
Well, where would we like to have? I mean, I thought that we had a very good dialogue at the field trip that we took, in which residents were there as well, and we were talking about moving them to that neighborhood or to that facility. There's also means of access for a road out to Myers Corners if we so choose to. The idea, again, was to move the maintenance mechanics, the skilled professionals, to that facility. Right now, as it stands, when a piece of equipment breaks down, it's typically in a park. The mechanic has to go out to that site to service it and bring it back. I feel that, again, not to hold up the safety of the employees working on the mowers and things like that, the lift would be a added benefit. And again, the department head who we trust to run the day-to-day, he's run significant facilities like Chelsea Piers and worked for the Hiltons. He feels that this facility is adequate and best for his department. I would yield to our department head and his experience on that.
Well, how does the rest of the board feel about moving that part to Oakwood Knolls?
I have no problem with the lift. I think the lift is something that's required. Again, I'm kind of hung up on which location.
So by way of background too, the barn would require approximately $130,000 in concrete new floors. It would also require additional electrical service to be run to that site. That's to the tune of maybe $20,000. The Oakwood Knolls site has the adequate concrete, the footings to mount that lift, as well as the adequate electrical supply. Again, right now, Buildings and Grounds is a scattered site model from Carnwath Farms to the barn to this building. Again, adding the mechanic shop at a central location in town where the facility is set for that and really does not need any financial obligation from the town's end would be the right thing to do.
I'm sorry, what did you say the cost was for the cement flooring? 130,000, did you say?
Out at Mart's, yeah.
Okay.
The barn, yeah.
And are we planning on repurposing that building?
Eventually for some sort of recreation facility. That's what we would love to do is, again, we've been talking about youth programming, senior programming, expanding recreational programming. Mart's Field in your ward, one of the most popular recreation facilities in the town. And right now, a significant portion of that is utilized by Buildings and Grounds, where people playing tennis, people picnicking, or summer camp currently see a maintenance facility, a maintenance yard with plows and materials scattered across it, utilizing the 1920 dairy barn long-term to be something better for our residents would be a great goal to have. But again, my idea is to clean up that site, that park, and get that out of public view, and again, start a long-term goal for that other facility. But again, right now, addressing a pending safety
So
need.
in all fairness to the Buildings and Grounds Department, they've done an outstanding job cleaning that up.
Fantastic job.
Compared to what it was before, if you look at it now, it's astronomically better. I don't know, I will defer to the Councilman Phillips here if he wants to have further discussion on that.
I think, I said this when we were there, I think the facilities needs to be in one place. That's my opinion. That's just one of 5 opinions. I don't see, without building a big building over there, I don't see how that whole facility could hold the Buildings and Grounds.
So if you were going to build a new building, where would you put it? Over at Marksfield? Would you put it, or would you put it at Oakwood Knolls? Where would you put it?
If I was designing it, I would put it at Marks. That's what I would do. And knock the barn down. Both buildings, I think, need to be replaced. That's my opinion.
Any idea what it would cost to do
Buy a
that?
steel building, I mean, we paid $800,000 over here, but you could buy one for $2 million.
And again, the idea behind repurposing the barn would be the character of that neighborhood, the character of that building. Besides the floor, obviously would have to be redone, but having that nice barn concept to be a nice rec center without spending too much money would be a nice opportunity. We continue to get kicked out of the school district for our rec programming, senior and youth. We continue to have a deficit of recreation space indoor. That was the idea, but again, the paramount issue at this moment is the Buildings and Grounds Department. We have great leadership there. They currently operate under a scattered site model right now. I don't want to hold up the safety of the employee. And again, I would defer to the employee and the department head on their experience and their expertise. They prefer the Oakwood Knolls site.
I'm just one vote, so I said what I had to say.
We had everything from Councilman Beal.
Well, I missed the field trip. Unfortunately, we had a tragedy involving someone's residence that I was consumed with, someone that we all know. So I couldn't make the field trip. But that's off Patty Place, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Is there any concern from the residents about our vehicles going through that neighborhood?
So I had spoken to a few neighbors. Actually, Ms. Petrillo was there for one of those conversations in the senior center. Because this would not be the entire groundskeeping fleet
Right.
that would stay over at Martz Field in the 4-bay and the 3-bay in the back. This would only be the maintenance mechanics and the mechanic himself. So you're averaging maybe 4 cars twice a day, in the morning going out and then returning back in the afternoon. Again, that was it. We are not looking at adding a substantial amount of traffic. I do not want to add any sort of traffic to there. Right now, chemo pollution comes in and out of there already, so that's a standard traffic. If you look to the left, Councilman, you'll see that there's a pathway. That is the tri-municipal trunk line that comes through there. We own the property all around that as well. And that goes out to Myers Corners Road. We also reserve that easement. So if long-term we see the need to put millings down and go straight out to Myers Corners Road, we can do that as well.
Did you want to take a site visit yourself, Bill, take a look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to. I mean, can we have further discussion about this? I'm still not sold on the idea. I mean, if we're going to do it, I want to put a building there that's bigger than this.
Again, I was encouraged to hear Councilman Phillips's, recommendation, put a building. I think, again, putting it somewhere out of sight, and centrally located in the town, whatever Buildings and Grounds facility it may be, would be the best option, and not have that in the center of a park. Again, Martz Field is getting more and more popular And I think that we're doing a disservice to residents if we, have a maintenance yard in the center of a park. And also out in the far end of town, rather than a centrally located hub between our most popular parks and Town Hall.
Because the only other question is if they, start centrally located, right, because they have to pass out assignments, et cetera, they're going to have to go from building to building, and they're going to lose time doing that because the mechanics are in one building, buildings and grounds, or the seasonal guys are out in a different building. So I don't know if that causes any kind of
It
issues or not.
doesn't, and the department head addressed that during the field trip as well. He says he calls his guys that are not meeting at the barn early that morning. He also instituted a work order mailbox system. So the day before, he goes around already and leaves the work orders, whether it's here at Town Hall or at the barn, with his different employees. So, again, I fully trust, the department head to run this department.
If you could show how that would fit there, fit most of the equipment there, I'd be in favor of it. But again, I would rather see most of the equipment in one place. And again, I had no idea about another access road. I think that would be important. I think it's a little bit more than Millings, but our engineer could tell us a little bit better than that.
Of course.
But I don't know the property lines. I don't know how much we own over there.
We own a significant amount outside of that one lot that the councilman's looking at. I think that was acquired under Supervisor Ruggiero's tenure. It's a significant.
So can we do this? Why can't we, I think we owe it to Bill to have an opportunity to go out there and look. I don't think we're going to say no to it. I think it's just give him an opportunity, see what he thinks from a location perspective, and do that, and make sure we get this thing approved, hopefully at the next meeting. I mean, I want to do it. I think it's the right thing to do. It's just a question of, where do you do it?
Okay.
And we don't have Councilwoman Bettina here either, so.
Councilwoman Bettina and I did have a conversation about the road. I thought that you were there, but I know that there are other conversations happening. Okay. Councilman Beal, you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
I'd like a resolution by the next town board meeting, if that's fair, and we can arrange for a field trip out there for you, Councilman.
Yeah, just move the table then.
I'll second that.
Moved by Councilman Beal, second by Councilman Casella. All in favor to table? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much. And Resolution 2024-211, correspondence log.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Beal, second by Councilman Phillips. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Motion passes. For items for special consideration, new business, I'd like to call up Director Fulton to address something that we've been talking about for quite some time, as well as tonight, upgrading the playground and park equipment at Castle Point Park, as well as Fleetwood Park. And we can forward this on to Councilwoman Bettina. This way she's got that.
I need to take a quick 5 minute.
Okay.
And I'm going to do something a little bit unorthodox in just 1 second. So I had been working at rapid speed with a playground company to get this information from them, from the discussion that we had that we wanted to move forward with scoping this out. They weren't able to get me all of the information, so in the unorthodox way, he got it to me while I was sitting here in this meeting. So you'll see there's one thing in there that does not have a photo, and everyone's phone just went off. That's the photo that goes with the third option. He literally sent it to me while I was sitting here. So just to start from the front of the packet, this Adirondack Trail one is of a size and need for a park like Fleetwood. It's a 2 to 5 year old and a 5 to 12 year old unit, so it covers all age ranges. And something to mention is for every single one of these, yeah, that's the third one we're gonna get to. For every single one of these, we do have to add on an additional $9,000. They gave me a separate quote for a swing set with 2 bays, 3 regular swings, and 1 toddler swing. And rather than include it on every single one, they just gave me that separate estimate and said it would get tacked on to each of these. So this is one that we're looking at for Fleetwood in terms of the pocket parks. It isn't a comparable size to what we had put in at the other pocket parks. You'll notice the price is higher. That is because nothing has ever gotten less expensive in the past couple of years. So these are all just for your consideration.
And Councilman Beal, the Adirondack Trail piece of equipment, that would also be considered for, I believe you wanted Indian Village?
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
Okay. So just for you to
And just so it's not.
consider, that would
yeah.
be yours.
So,
Not necessarily. There's similar ones. I'd like to spice it up at
Bill,
each
it's
park.
either that or a
but-
teeter-totter.
well, I want to talk, listen, you can't just drop a playground in a neighborhood, because what happens is, yeah, it's great for the people that live there, but when it's beautiful like this, people from all over the town come to it, and then next thing you know, everybody's
Yeah.
calling saying, why are all these people coming in our neighborhood? So,
Well, I mean, that's
Yes.
kind of what was done before. I mean, Fleetwood is nothing more than.
no, I'm not talking about, I mean, Fleetwood, I get it, because they have an established playground, but that Indian Village decommissioned sewer plant, I think it is.
Well, so were all of our parks for the most part.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I'm saying that I would want to talk to the residents first and say, hey, what do you think?
And again, we were floating it out there. You wanted either 9D or Indian Village.
I think 9D is something we need to look at because, there's a big open void space right there that can be.
Not for too much longer, but yes.
I know, I saw the plaque there, looks good,
Yeah.
but that's all there is there.
Yes.
Plaque there.
The trail's cut in.
Yeah, I saw that, we gotta get out there and take a walk, but.
Yes. So
But yeah.
I just want to put in perspective that, again, we treated all the pocket parks the same, with
Yes.
similar type of equipment.
Sure.
Yes. All right, so then we get on to the second two. This is the kind of equipment that we're talking about to create a comparable system at Castle Point to what we have. Councilman Casella, I don't know if you had come back in yet when I said on each of these estimates, we have to add an additional $9,000 for the swing set that would accompany whichever system we choose. So when we did the Martz Field Playground, something that I'm also looking to do for this one is, it is a playground that is for ages 5 to 12. That is the age of our camp population. They're going to be the primary users. So to split it and have equipment for younger people and the camp age would be something very costly to do for something that's not going to completely support that program. So the first one that you're looking at, Elliott, that one, with the exception of adding on the swing set, is, my goodness, my thumbs aren't working.
Is this the same company that we've purchased from before?
Okay, so we have used a couple different playground companies over the years. Game Time is who did Robinson and Martz, and I hope none of our other playground companies are listening, because I can say that the company that I have been most satisfied with start to finish is Game Time, who did Martz and Robinson.
And again, those pieces of equipment are nearly 10 years old and
Have held up better
have
than
held up the best.
newer things.
The newest pieces of
Yeah.
equipment from other companies that have been recently installed already have chips and dings and have not stood the test of time as well. So
Yeah.
that's why we're returning to the original ones. When I was on the rec committee, when Jessica picked those out, and those two have stood the test of time, and they're probably our best ones.
Yeah. It's important to note that for these are a complete start-to-finish estimates, start-to-finish estimate. So, meaning the installation, putting down the surfacing, doing all that sort of work is included in here, so it wouldn't fall to our Buildings and Grounds Department. So that is the first of the two that I was looking at. It's always important to look at the overhead view, which is the second page in these, because the front view looks, I always find it looks completely unimpressive in comparison to when you look at it overhead, and it actually shows you all the components that are part of the piece of equipment. So when you're looking at that overhead, it shows you that it has something that spans across and something that's important too, and we find that gets most used by that 5 to 12 or 5 to 13 age range is a lot of upper body stuff, climbing, bars. They all think they're going to be on the next American Ninja Warrior, so they really want to be doing that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily all about things like slides and that sort of thing, but you still have the slides. Now, the third one, which has a higher price tag, which of course is my favorite because, you know, but that one is the one that I just texted you all the photo of. The company was not able to get me the photo until during the meeting. So again, you have the estimate on there for that, and you would have to add about $9,000. I'll get it to you, don't worry. The estimate is on there. It is a larger system, hence the higher price tag. But again, it's a piece of equipment for 5 to 12-year-olds, the population of the camp at Castle Point.
Which one would you say is closest to the one at Martz Field?
The last one.
The last one, yeah.
And then, and then my follow-up was, you know, the last one is pretty spread out. The second one, the Elliott, is pretty condensed. The footprint up at Castle Point, that's pretty small, I mean, in comparison, because it's up on that hilltop, there's some trees there.
It is up on that hilltop. We would have to talk about a couple of trees coming down. Will it fit? Yes. So,
Do we know how much we've paid previously for these types of systems?
all right, so in 2015/2016, we paid about $120,000 for the playground at Martz Field. So when you look at the rate of inflation over time and you see these numbers that look really scary, it is in fact in line with how the prices have gone up on everything over the past 9 years.
So the 120,000 is equivalent to the $200,000 one?
Yes. No, I actually, I don't know that answer exactly, but, you know.
Yeah, we need to, I mean, in my opinion, we need to, well, first of all, what's the procurement policy on something like this?
These,
They're all the state bid.
yeah, they're all on contract.
Yeah, I mean, $200,000 for a playground is way off the charts, in my opinion. That is crazy. That's like a house. You
Yeah.
you better be living in that playground.
I can, if you'd like, yes.
And that's why we recommended the $149,000 one, which is more on par with what you've paid in the past
Yes.
10 years ago at $130,000.
Yes, of course, you know, I have to come up here and shoot for the stars with the $200,000 one because it is gorgeous, but that's why I also have the additional option
And, you
up
know,
here.
again, I'm sure Councilwoman Bettina would say this too, as it's her ward. The Castle Point Playground dates back to the early 1990s, and has definitely seen its fair share of better days, yes. So,
When was the last time you saw a metal slide?
yes, it still has a metal slide, so technically, it's not up to regulation specs.
Yeah.
It's got, you know, gravel, not mulch. It's in rough shape, and the people of Chelsea, I think, deserve a new one.
So, sir,
Especially with
sorry, go ahead.
especially with this new summer camp.
I was going to say, the option number 2 here is more conducive to the terrain up there for that property, because you don't have a lot of space up there to put equipment anyway. So the other one was much too much spread out. So this would also, we could use ARPA funds for this, correct?
Yes. This is part of our conversations that we've talked about, using ARPA funds and coming up with that list. And as I've expressed to the town board, as we get these projects, we're going to bring them to you in an expedited timeline, hopefully for your consideration.
So
Yes.
from a timeline perspective, how quickly, because we need a PO
right, for this year in order to qualify for ARPA funds? How
So that-
quickly can you get one?
Yeah.
And when do you need to know by that we need?
So that's the beauty of doing these things on contract. This one is part of one of the Omnia Partners cooperative purchasing agreements, meaning I have these estimates, okay? I know that's not what's happening tonight, but if you said, Jessica, go for your dreams, we're going to sign off on this one, it could be done tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which also means if we are doing this the first week of December, the paperwork could be processed that quickly as well.
Yeah.
So, just a different question. So I'm looking at the layout, because I was up there this past weekend to take a look at it. It looks like we're going to need some other work up there, additional work.
Absolutely.
So as an example, the pavilion would probably have to be extended. Parking would have to, something would have to happen with the parking, because there's no real
Yeah.
parking there for the
So-
second playground.
Jessica's getting an estimate on the pavilion.
Well, so we have a step that I have to take before that, which is I have to get the Board of Health out there, because the Board of Health has to look at the bathrooms. The bathrooms at Castle Point are similar to the bathrooms at Martz, so I don't anticipate an issue there. But what they have to do is tell me, if you want to have, say, 150 kids out here, this is the square footage of the pavilion that you need. And that's how they rate that. So I have to get that information from them before I can proceed to get a pavilion estimate.
And then with the parking, I've met with the acting supervisor of buildings and grounds on a new parking layout that we could do in-house using millings and adding additional parking through there. The benefit of Castle Point 2 is when this was once a summer camp site, the town had spent a considerable amount of money fencing in different sections of that park already. So, for example, where the memorial is and where the playground is expected to go is already fenced in, actually better than Mart's. And the remainder of that park site is all fenced in, as well as the restrooms are actually in better shape than most of our other parks. And Buildings and Grounds this summer spent a considerable amount of time renovating them and getting them up to spec as well, so.
Yeah.
What you would probably have to do is with the fencing out there, you'd have to probably take some of the fencing as you're coming in on the right-hand side for parking there, because, again, there's probably 3 spots unless you come in. There's
What
not
we
a
were,
lot of parking there.
what we were talking about was moving everything in, and so right now it's very unsafe, the way the parking's set up in that gate.
Correct.
So we would move the gate back inside past the pavilion to right before where that road goes down to the softball fields, and then do a fenced-in enclosure with parking going basically in front of that pavilion there. So that would be reserved for staff, let's say, so that it's not for parents coming and dropping off. This way you have that entire driveway, you have the roadway coming in for guests, for whatever else. So we had mapped it out, and we'd be able to accommodate parking.
Who would do that work? Is our Buildings and Grounds guys?
Buildings and
do it?
Grounds and Highway can do that.
And
And
just
what
to
about the pavilion? They would do the pavilion too?
If it's a kit, then I would assume so.
If it's a kid, it's something they could do. I would like to point out, when it comes to the parking plan, that is something that we would also have to run by the Board of Health, because they, of course, want to make sure that we are not driving cars too close to children.
Yes.
We, like to have as many leave at the end of the day as arrived at the beginning. So we would have to run that past them as well.
So last week, when we talked about the salaries for the camp counselors, I specifically asked you, how much more money will this cost to get the camp up?
Correct.
So in a week, it's gone from 0 to 200 plus grand.
So-
And I'm fine with it, because I know it, because I went and I saw it.
Yeah.
And I think we need to look at it and design a place for the camp.
Well, I think what Director Fulton was talking about was more so the materials and staffing, things like
Okay,
that.
so then
The
maybe
capital.
she misunderstood me,
Yeah,
because
so-
I asked specifically,
Yeah.
and this is going to cost considerable amount of money. That being said, we've always said we need to redo Castle Point.
Yes, no
Yeah.
matter what happens, I mean,
I-
completely
and I
independent
agree
of
with
that,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It
Just-
needs the new pavilion, it
So-
needs,
Where's the water source? Is it from that well that's over
Correct.
there?
Correct.
Is it potable?
yes.
Yes.
And so there is a full filtration system. Technically, right now, you're not supposed to be drinking out at Mart's either, I don't think.
No, it gets tested, you
Okay,
can.
so it's tested.
Yeah.
Back when this was a summer camp up until 2011, 11, because that's when all the other scattered sites closed. It still has a full water softener and treatment system built into it. So.
Yeah, and a lot of the upgrades to the site were part of the ARPA discussion.
Yes.
More so than the summer camp discussion. Now, that doesn't mean that one is not contingent on the other. I don't want to give that impression at all. If we're not willing to use those ARPA funds to make these improvements to the park, summer camp is not an option.
Yeah, and
There.
again, what we had talked about at the field trip, Councilman, I think that you might have left by then. We were talking at March, Councilman Casella and Councilwoman Bettina and Director Fulton and I, about getting a list about these projects. And Councilwoman Bettina was very adamant too about getting, the quote for here. We talked about the pavilion. We talked about doing whatever we had to do to get Castle Point ready. A lot of it has already been taken care of. A lot of it can be done in-house through our labor and through our resources.
I'd just like to see some kind of plan. The place needs to be redesigned.
And we need to have a plan anyway for the Department of Health to approve it. So we know that this board needs to fund a pavilion and needs to fund a playground facility.
So is the cart before the horse here? Don't you need the health department to say yes first before we start doing? Nothing personal with this stuff here as far as putting the infrastructure and the equipment and stuff, but for having a camp, don't we need to have all that in place first?
They will approve us to have a camp there.
We already did.
Yeah.
It's been a number of years, though. It's been over 10 years.
So like a place that we used to have a camp that we probably wouldn't be approved to have a camp is a camp where we used to use porta potties and not have running water. That's not going to fly now. A camp like Castle Point, they'll approve us to have a camp there based on the water and the bathrooms, but if we want to have a camp of the size that we are hoping to have, that's where those discussions need to take place. I could get a camp licensed at Castle Point. They'd probably ask me to take down the existing playground as a safety hazard, but we could get a camp approved at Castle Point with very few improvements, just not a large camp.
Is there more equipment stored there, or is this just empty storage?
No, so right now, the garage that's there, that stores the water treatment facility. There is a trailer in the rear that used to house softball equipment.
Oh,
down back, that has since been vandalized and broken into probably 10 years ago after the park left. The bathrooms, again, are in great shape after being renovated. They're going to have new floors this winter, as well as all of the other restrooms. That's going to be done in-house by Buildings and Grounds. So again, we're talking about playground and pavilion. And again, in talking to many of the residents in the Chelsea area, they're very excited. A number of former counselors have reached out and been very excited as well, excited to get their kids to go to that camp. It's just, again, a long time coming. And again, this camp closed relatively recently. Historically,
It was the last one to close.
Yeah, those were the two very popular ones. Yeah. Because the town historically used to have, obviously, summer camps in each hamlet, then it turned into each neighborhood. The Houstonville Fire Company was host to one of those. The actual Chelsea Schoolhouse was the first location of that up until like the 1990s. And then the early 2000s, it obviously moved to Castle Point. So obviously, the intention here is to go back to serving those residents out there.
It's exciting to have an overflowing program and need to do something like this.
So if the board is comfortable, and obviously we'll engage Councilwoman Bettina on this, we will deliberate, and I'd like to have a resolution put on for the next meeting for a final determination.
Can the colors be adjusted?
Oh, gosh, yes. Yeah, I am not a fan of the colors in the pictures, but
You don't like the light blue?
No.
I don't dislike it, but I'm just thinking, depending on other things that are within the view shed,
Yeah.
Bill, this is your color, I'm telling you.
So, Yeah, I'll have to
That-
see
that-
what my kids think.
And again, we're trying to standardize these throughout the town rather than being haphazard with different colors. It's kind of what was happening before. Going back to Jessica's initial design at Mart's and Robinson Lane would be preferred,
I like
follow those
that
colors.
nature look.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Robinson Lane one I like that one.
Yeah.
That looks great.
Thank you.
And that's what we were looking at doing, basically with this Elliott or the other one here, just matching the colors, but giving the kids on that side of the town the same size of equipment.
Yeah, okay.
All
Thank you.
right. And also, if you're not satisfied with the ones that are presented tonight, I can get other ones as well. If you want to see more options, I can do that.
I think throwing too many options might delay it even further. No offense to anyone up here, but I think, obviously, Director Fulton, you are the expert. You've built these before. You recommend these two, and I think the town board can deliberate. The Fleetwood and the Pocket Park ones. Does anyone have any comments on this Adirondack Trail one for Fleetwood? No.
They look good.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, I don't object to it. I mean, it's basically very basic, though.
It is,
And
yeah.
don't forget, they're getting a swing set with it, too.
Yes, so
Okay,
every
each
single one
gets
of
a
these,
swing
we're
set.
adding a swing set. So,
$9,000 on top of the price, though, right?
yeah. So when you are selecting a piece of equipment that's going to be that sort of all ages equipment,
Yeah.
the 2 to 5 and the 5 to 12, what you see is the height drops on all of it because of the appropriate fall heights. Not that anyone's going to fall, but the appropriate
Right.
fall heights for the different age groups.
How old is the play set that's out at Fleetwood right now?
Fleetwood is early 2000s. It is a plastic
Yeah.
prefab set that was there and is in very, very rough shape.
Yeah, and it's deteriorated very quickly, because, I mean, even about 5 years ago, it just needed a cleaning, but now it's,
Yeah, we did a tour of all of our parks and facilities, and that one has deteriorated significantly. I believe that the swing set, however, dates back to the 1980s.
That's old. I remember, I think, putting that thing in there, so.
Yeah.
let's not refer to things from the 1980s as old.
I'm not, I'm just saying,
that's old.
it's outlived
The
its
swing set, yeah.
useful life.
All right, yeah,
That did not
The
help.
swing set.
I don't have any objection
Yeah,
to,
so we just put it on the agenda for next time.
yeah,
We'll-
I would like to hear from Councilwoman Bettina on it.
Yeah.
Of
Yes.
course.
Yes,
I'm sure she'll be okay with it, but.
okay, good. I just want to make sure that we're good to go with that. Thank you, folks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have nothing further, and I have no need to go into executive session tonight. It's already 9:30.
I would just, the one thing I would like the board to consider, I'd given you all that Lewis Sign Company last week. We were looking at 4 of those signs, and they are on on that, what do you say, Quest?
State bid.
They are. So I think it's something we could do with ARPA funds.
Yep.
It's about all total in, and I know your concern was to put up a mason or brick, so I talked with the owner today, and they don't do it, but they're constantly done. They did the one up by 9D, that the senior housing over there, that's their sign, and it's got a mason brick, and it's just done by a local contractor.
Okay.
So these would be installed for that price of the 41.
Yeah, and again,
$846.
Councilman and for the public, my concern was getting these signs, which already are not allowed by the town code, but getting something like what's over at the junior high. It's just a stick standing in the middle of a field. Trying to be somewhat within our town sign code and keeping with the characteristic of parks and facilities, having the masonry foundation, the monument style, out at Schlatt House, same thing, and keeping with the colonial style look out there. Again, if we're going to do something that's kind of against our own town code in a sense, which is good for getting information out there and means of communication, I think that we should take some time in looking at making sure that it is as attractive as possible for the town. And that was my concern.
Well, I think what you can do is, again, it's the base. So if you look at the one in the junior high school, it's just a steel structure.
Yeah.
If you look at Ketchum High School, you can see that what they did is they put that stone foundation. I think we can kind of put any foundation we want, so.
We did it out here.
Yeah.
So I think it's more important that you take a look at the signs, get the signs ordered, because I think we all kind of agree with and then you can do the base of it later on.
You could get
Again-
somebody like a Guado or somebody like that to just put whatever you want on there.
Yeah, no, as long as that's being considered, we can draft a resolution for the next
Absolutely.
meeting.
Yeah.
But again, that's a big thing. So I would also want to see the monument base, factored in and
That
whatever
would-
else.
Yeah, that would be, that and the electric would be separate. You'd have to run the lines to the sign.
Okay.
It was cheaper when we referred to it as a planter. That's what we did out front here. So that's what the junior high needs. They need a planter around that because it looks like,
Looks awful.
unproportional or disproportional, right? Because it's just sticking up. So they probably will put a planter there, but the problem is that area also floods right there too, so they have to think about that. With respect to the code, I've been through this debate 900 times here. The sign code exists for the purposes of commercial establishments.
Correct.
Right? I went through this with the fire department because we put a sign at the fire department that needs to be replaced, by the way, because the LEDs are not, you can't replace the panels anymore. And I remember sitting here and being told, your sign violates the town code. And I said, well, if I need it for public messaging, for emergency purposes, I don't care. If there's an evacuation order, if we need to get information out to the public, then I don't care if the sign blinks, honestly. I'm not selling anything. We're providing important information. And that's exactly what we can do with these signs, right? These signs primarily would be used for notifying the public of town events that are going on at respective parks. But if we do have a situation, like right now, burn ban, right? Important information can be put on these signs that serves a purpose, right? So that's why I have no problem with digital signs. We're not putting animated, photos and movies and things like that on it. That's distracting to drivers, right? We're putting static text on these things. And the technology now allows you to put a picture of somebody on them, which is nice. Rombout does that, right?
Yeah.
When somebody passes, Rombout puts their photo. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
And I don't think anyone's debating that. It's just, I don't want to see what happened at the junior high happen throughout the town. And,
Yeah, no.
And as long as I have as long as I have a consensus of the board
Sure.
that we'd like to make it look as aesthetically pleasing
course.
as possible.
Of course.
That's what I'd like to get. That's what I'd like to get.
The sign in front of the town hall is actually a repurposed sign from
Houstonville.
the Houstonville Fire Department, right? And when we brought it here, it was just two sticks in the ground sticking up.
Yeah, I remember.
We built a planter around it to make it look proportional. And yeah,
That's-
great point. It really makes the, aesthetically look better. Let's just not plant plants that grow higher than the sign.
Exactly.
Grace left already,
Yeah.
but the plants that they chose
That was not the garden club.
last year grew higher than the sign, and you couldn't read what the sign said, and everybody said to me, don't touch the plants. I said, well, you can't read the sign.
Yeah.
So, we got to put lower plants in there.
Yes.
So I'm all for this. Put it on paper, let's make sure it's consistent with procurement. Let's keep our eye on the ball with the masonry work, because that costs a few bucks, right?
Yeah.
And
But
electrical work too.
Yeah, I was going to
Right,
say.
if we can get the ARPA funding to pay for these types of tangible things that we can point and touch and serve a purpose, that's the idea. That's what we need to be doing. Whether it be a playground, whether it be a sign that we can use for recreational messaging and public safety messaging, I think that we're doing the right thing. So I'm all for that. I know we're on a tight time crunch with this, so let's put it together, let's gain consensus and get it done.
Plus, you can do the artwork on the banner as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
All right.
Before you guys, I just have a couple items real fast, if I may. I know we're running late here, but I think it's important to reiterate the fact that there is a statewide burn ban in effect as of today. So statewide, the governor today declared a burn ban for the entire state of New York, which is in effect, I should say, until November 30th. So the whole state of New York, there's a burn ban, bottom line. Town of Wappinger, you already can't burn because we are over 20,000 people, and in the state of New York, you can't have open burning with over 20,000. So there should be no question, if you see your neighbor burning, you should probably tell them not to do that or call 911 because it is an imminent hazard if someone is burning, and the fire department needs to put that fire out because it is so dry. What we're seeing today is, in addition to the higher than normal temperatures, we're seeing wind gusts that are considerable, and we're seeing the third part of this, which most people don't necessarily follow, is the relative humidity. The relative humidity is so low right now that it's a tinderbox out there. So I can't stress how important it is not to be burning, and don't be flicking your cigarette out your window of your car. I understand there's no ashtrays in cars now. Figure it out. Be responsible. You can't flick it out. I can't tell you how many mulch fires we're getting on Route 9 in the medians next to the plazas. People are just flicking it out, and then we have to go and put the fire out, which is crazy. We had a fire adjacent to the Presbyterian Church in Houstonville that was secondary to a cigarette that almost burned the second barn down on that property. So that was 2 o'clock in the morning.
And caused considerable damage.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that much damage, but I did speak to the owner today. So that was a cigarette that was flicked, right? If somebody didn't see that on 9D at 2 in the morning, that would have burned the whole thing down. So luckily, our volunteers were able to stop that. Resources from this town will be deploying to Orange County, Greenwood Lake, this week. We're going to have personnel, we're going to have equipment heading into Greenwood Lake for that 5,000-acre fire, which is the largest wildfire in New York State since 2008. So
I believe Chelsea's already been deployed.
Chelsea had a tanker there the day before yesterday. Houstonville is going to be deploying. New Hackensack was actually in Dover for that fire. So we are providing mutual aid to a number of different areas. The Duchess Golf Club was on fire
multiple times
over the weekend. Multiple resources from this town assisted Arlington with that. So it's a real issue right now. We are prepared in this town, though. We are not depleting the resources in this town when we are assisting other areas. And also, let's again keep the family of Daniel Vasquez in our thoughts and prayers, the New York State Parks employee who tragically at 18 years old lost his life on the line, basically cutting a line, as they say, in wildfire fighting, taking a rake and pulling, and basically cutting a line. He unfortunately and tragically lost his life. So let's not forget those that are putting themselves in harm's way. Lastly, I spoke to the supervisor about this crazy traffic problem on 9D that is just unbelievable. Sitting in traffic for 20 minutes to go from Montclair Townhouse to 9D and New Hamburg Road is just ludicrous, and I'll tell you why. Today, we have volunteer firefighters that cannot get to the firehouse. Can't get to they leave their house, they sit in traffic, they have a blue light, which is a courtesy light, they can't get to the firehouse. So the fire chief spoke to the contractors today and said, what is going on here? And I know we spoke about Central Hudson being a subcontractor, the Flaggers being a subcontractor of the subcontractor. The state DOT is aware of the situation. Obviously, our assemblyman is aware of the situation. I don't care at this point. Now there's an impact on public safety. I can't get volunteer firefighters to the firehouse because they can't get through the traffic that is stopped for 20 minutes. Yep. So what we've done as a stopgap is we have issued 2 staff vehicles out to key individuals that have to get to the firehouse, but I still need to be able to get the rest of the volunteers there, and we have a complete gridlock. So that is a concern that we're going to be continuing to discuss tomorrow with the state DOT, which is the work permit that these individuals are working under.
Yeah, and let me stress this loud and clear. We have received, to date, over 47 inquiries from residents, and each one we have pursued with Central Hudson, each one we have pursued to the Assemblyman's office, to the Senator. Central Hudson and the state of New York did not notify the town of Wappinger of this work. We were not notified. The fire company was not notified. Policing agencies were not notified. So this was sprung upon us. And again, this is not a town road. So no one should be calling the highway superintendent either. These are not his guys. This is not a town road. We encourage each and every one of you to continue to contact our state senator, our state assemblyman, as this is a DOT permitted road, and Central Hudson is the one installing this gas main through Houstonville there. We have been notified that as we continue to have open communication with the state, the 2 of those flaggers have been terminated. Everyone's calls definitely are helpful, and I hope people continue to call their state assemblyman and their state senator. We remain in communication and contacting them daily, but again, your phone calls, your advocacy are best utilized when you contact the state senator and the state assemblyman.
The greater issue here, besides the traffic, is, Larry, it looks like it's an 8-inch gas main that's going down the right-of-way that, well, the town wasn't notified of this, the fire department wasn't notified of this, and just from quickly going by, not that I was quickly, you can't quickly
No, you
drive.
can't go quickly.
I'm driving by looking at this, it looks like an 8-inch line that's going into the ground. It would seem to me there should be some sort of communication with the fire department that there's an 8-inch gas line going through the middle of our town, and there's been zero discussion on that, especially in the wake of the history of gas explosions here in this town. I certainly would hope there'd be better proactive communication on what we're doing, right? So again, Central Hudson, we have to have other discussions with Central Hudson here. Perhaps this could be part of that discussion.
Oh, it will be.
And I'm not trying to put this on, specifically on Central Hudson, because there's a subcontractor who is doing the work, and there's I found out today that the subcontractor subcontracted another subcontractor to do the traffic. So it's like 3 deep here, right?
Yeah.
So again, for the folks that are watching and the folks that are here, we hear you, but it's a situation where we weren't even looped in on this project. We have a state police barracks here that's in the middle of this entire gridlock, right? We have a fire department right here that's in the middle of the gridlock. We have our primary EMS station in the middle of the gridlock, and I'm being told today that on Friday they're moving this operation down to Middle Bush Road. So how's that going to work?
Exactly. And again, this is the first time that we're hearing this, is today, that now they're moving operations.
Yeah.
I heard through the grapevine when I'm in contact with Central Hudson that, oh yeah, we're going to be going down Dean Avenue. I said, well, what are you doing on Dean Avenue? That's a town road now. You haven't received any permitting from the town, haven't notified the highway superintendent, or you're burrowing under the road, or you're repaving the road. Oh, well, we don't know. We'll get back to you.
Yeah.
This is the frustration that we continue to deal with, and we are in contact with them daily about this project. And again, considering the past failures, I'm going to say it, the past failures of Central Hudson in this town, they should have better communication with this town government. Just saying.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor it, but I wanted to make sure we took a minute to talk about this, because the amount of residents, and I'm with you. Listen, I'm with you. And, it kind of came to a head in the last couple of days. We got a lot of brush fires going on that we're trying to get people to the firehouse to get out on the road here. And I got guys saying, what am I supposed to do? I'm sitting in this traffic. And it's a tough situation. So we do, just so folks understand, we have handed out staff vehicles to people so they can get to the firehouse, but really, we shouldn't have to do that. This should be a situation where we're in the loop and we're part of the discussion, and we'll take it offline from here. But again, sorry for the inconvenience. We did not cause it. That's all I have under this.
Very good.
Under this final part of the meeting. Thank you.
I was going to say, I have, again, no further business to go into executive session for, so I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I just would like to.
You need a motion to schedule a special town board meeting November 18th.
I will not be
coming
here.
Monday.
I will not be here.
Well, you'll need a special town board meeting before the November 20th for the scheduling of the budget, so decide which day you want.
November 20th.
Okay, that's good, that's a date. So you'll need a motion, you'll need to schedule it.
I'll make a motion that we schedule the meeting on November 20th.
And this is just for the purposes of adopting the budget?
Correct.
All right, so hold on. So what's today? The 12th, 18. All right,
It's a Wednesday.
Yeah, do we want to do this? Is it just for adopting the budget? I mean, I would imagine at that point,
Correct.
Our
It's-
deliberation should be complete by that point, correct?
Correct, it should be.
So do we want to try to do a 6 o'clock one instead of a 7?
I would appreciate that.
I'm just trying to figure out how to maximize my time with my children. So can we move it for 6? Does that work for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll make the motion unless somebody made it already.
I'll just make the time
Oh,
6.
go ahead, okay.
Moved by Councilman Casella, second by Councilman Beal, to schedule a special town board meeting for November 20th for the purposes of adopting the final budget. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
I would just like to, yesterday was Veterans Day, and I'd like to thank Supervisor Jessica for another great ceremony by the town honoring our veterans. It was well attended, and the veterans, for them, it was well deserved. And so thank you.
No, we're very lucky in this town to have multiple ceremonies from the towns, the villages. This is, truly a town that celebrates our military, our veterans, those who have served. So we're very lucky to have that.
Good
Thank you.
work.
Thank you. Okay.
And I just have a couple quick comments, too. So I just want to pass out a couple of thank yous to Mike Tremper. Mike Tremper did an outstanding job helping me out on Regency Drive. There was a number of issues there with fire hydrants no longer there. He took the time to go out there with myself to explain it to the number of residents. Went over very well. They understood. Again, this goes to a long process where I guess they had pipes out there at one point in time, and they had to disconnect them, and he explained why. The residents were very, very appreciative of that. I also want to thank the supervisor for helping us out. We had soccer out at Regency Park. A number of the lights were flashing to the back of people's yards, so we were able to take care of that. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I do appreciate your help on that.
Thank you.
I want to also thank Mike Sheehan. Actually helped us out on my street. We had somebody who dropped a cell phone in one of the storm drains, and the actual storm drain grid fell in. So we had to have Mike come out on a Sunday, put the grid back on.
Did you get the cell phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, she got the cell phone, but
Yeah, we had our 2 highway mechanics actually go out and do that.
but they did a great job. They came out there. They're out there in within a half an hour, and were able to take care of that and secure that. Last thing I want to do is I also want to thank Sal. We actually over at Mart's Field have all the LED lights up there, which is great, so people can play pickleball late at night. We actually changed the time. Daylight savings time, we had one night where they didn't go until 6, and there was a clinic out there at like 5:15, so we actually got the
Things
timer
happen.
fixed, but it's all fixed. Again, supervisor helped with that too as well, so thank you on that, but great job by the team. And as Chris said, excellent ceremony on Veterans Day. Again, tremendous showing, and we do appreciate everyone coming out to be there. Nice job, Jessica.
The first day after the clocks changed, that was, I got to write that down. The first day after the clocks changed, there was an event at the field, and it's completely black, dark, and they're all calling everybody, how can we play pickleball? There's no lights, because the clocks changed and the timer didn't get changed. I just think that's so funny. I'm sorry. I was
Unless you were out there with the residents like I was.
I pictured Al in his shorts out there in the dark.
I have a little mini flashlight.
All right. Again, folks, as you've heard tonight, there's a lot going on in the town, way more for me to list, and that's why we try to, let folks know, whether it's through our newsletter or through these types of discussions. So, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councilman Beal, second by Councilman Casella. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, folks.